dream that never ends. The fighter in you brings out the fighter in me. Shake it off and take your corner, time to shout out. The fighter in you brings out the fighter in me. Shake it off and take your corner, time to shout out. It's time to shout.
Welcome back, fight friends, to the Shadow Fight Podcast. It is episode, I believe, 102, and I'm sitting beside a former El Jefe of the Muay Thai Canada, Mr. Robin Finley. Robin, thanks for coming in, man.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. This is super exciting.
Hey, so we're going to roll right on with this because we were just talking right now, and we just pushed play. So, Rob, Turkey and Pistols. So he does the from the Calgary Sessions, it's called, right?
Yeah,
Jeff
Calgary
Humphreys?
Sessions with Jeff Humphreys.
So the logo, the big crazy hair.
Yep, that's the guy. That's the man.
There you go. Well, that logo was done by Rob from Turkey and Pistols.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant. So I mean, I know Jeff a little bit just through my brother and hockey and such. And then when I saw that logo, I mean, Jeff's just a character himself. And
Yeah, nailed it, hey?
nailed it, 100%. Like that's perfect branding. Good job by the Turkey Pistols guys.
Same with our logo as well. Shadow
Yeah.
Podcast.
Oh yeah, it's
he's
great
responsible
too.
as
Love
well.
it. Yeah.
So, yep. Shout out
Small
to you.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Small world. That's what Calgary's all about, right?
There you go, man. So I appreciate you coming in. Now, I know you're a busy fella, and we were just talking about how you first found the podcast was hanging out in Mexico. I'm jealous. It's my
Yes,
favorite place
it
to
was
be. And so we've been circling this wagon for a little bit. And if I'm going to be honest, I never thought this podcast would ever happen. I'm not for any particular reason, but I'm sure grateful that we were in contact because I'm sure we're going to get into politics. And by the way, every time, I've said it a million times, I'm just curious. That's all.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
I want everyone to flourish. So every time politics gets brought up, I definitely get messages. So I'm just being curious, friends, okay? Relax. I have no idea. So, and I think this is important because I think, I would imagine, so you being the president of Muay Thai Canada, you must see all the dumb messages from fight fans, armchair quarterbacks about how fights went, how rules should go. I mean, it annoys me. You must be rolling, pulling out your hair.
It's funny because, so I held that position I just kind of wrapped it up here recently. So for 18 years. So it was
crazy. Congrats.
Thank you. President of Canadian Muay Thai Council, originally amateur, which evolved into Muay Thai Canada. But interestingly enough, so I don't see a lot of that stuff. So,
good.
Some of it would filter through to me off big events and things like that. But the sort of the day-to-day those things like, hey, I don't like the way that fight went would come to me from time to time, but pretty rare. So,
Good.
and it's not like I wasn't accessible. People know where to find me, but I'm not all over social media. Like I'm a LinkedIn guy, kind of a business guy. I'm not on Instagram. And
probably for the better.
Right? And a lot of that stuff kind of happens through there, like those little complaining things. And I don't get too many of them. So yeah, I guess I was lucky. I got insulated myself enough. That way. So I still hear about them, but not all of them.
Sure. And we'll talk about one specifically.
Sure.
But so where did now I remember training with you at Mike Miles and way back in the day. And so how did Muay Thai come into your life? And like me, I don't have to. I don't fight. I don't want to fight. I don't want to diet. I don't want to put in the training. That's all. I don't want to do that anymore. However, I still get to be super hardcore. I commentate the podcast, all that kind of stuff. So, and obviously yourself being the president of Muay Thai Canada. So where did all this start, and how did you find yourself in a position like that?
Well, it's a good story. I think it's a good story. I mean, I started out, I didn't get into the sport until later in my 20s. So I played varsity hockey at the University of Calgary. So I'm a hockey player and a lacrosse player.
Okay.
Both to pretty high levels.
Yeah, okay.
My hockey career didn't go exactly as planned. So I saw more bench time than ice time at the university, but I got a little bit of school paid for. So as hockey wrapped up, I kind of went out, and I'm a goalie. So I'm not the best athlete kind of guy. A lot of my game was mental. So that was, something that carried me pretty far, which obviously applies pretty well in fighting as well.
Without a doubt.
And so as a kid growing up, you're playing hockey all the time. You don't get a chance to do anything else. And I'm like everybody else. I liked Bruce Lee and Bloodsport and all those things. I always wanted to do a martial art. Mm-hmm. So when I wrapped up playing hockey, I went and tried to play a little bit of recreational sort of beer league hockey. And, I walk in and I'm all like engaged. My head's in the game. I got to think about the game. That's how only way I can play, only way I know how. And basically didn't know how to turn off the competitive switch.
Okay.
So I'd walk in and guys are cracking beers. And to me, that wasn't fun. My wife's like, can't you just play for fun? I'm like, yeah, but it's fun to win. So I couldn't do it. So I'm like, okay, time for something new. But I need to fill that competitive spirit.
And by the way, we always see athletes, supreme athletes talk about this online, but it's really true. Like, it's hard to even explain that to people, and there's no point. Like,
No, you're right. You either have it or you don't, I think.
Right.
You can't drive it out of people. And,
Right.
I mean, I coach young lacrosse player athletes now, and I always talk about the things that you can't teach, and it's like the compete and the drive and
Right.
some of those things.
and if you have it, you have it. And if you don't, you don't.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, anyway, so at that point in time, I decided I want to take up a martial art. So I literally did a little world tour around Calgary, started checking in on all the different gyms. Went to a karate gym. I don't even remember who they were.
So straight scratch. Just
Yep, straight
I'm just
from
gonna.
scratch.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And as luck would have it, I walked into the Mike Miles gym on 11th Avenue downtown. The
man.
classic,
Legendary.
Yes, legendary. It's a fight gym. Right?
It is. It is.
It's not a health club. It's a fight gym.
That's right.
It smells like a gym, and it just had character.
The second you went down the stairs, you smelled
100%.
it. Yeah.
And at that time, I came down, and at that time, Keith Crawford was working with Mike Miles.
Shout out to Keith. Yeah.
So yeah, shout out to Keith, great guy. He's it's like classic businessman, and he did his businessman thing on me. So I went in, I met with him, and he kind of sold me on it. And again, he was an athlete from another sport, plus CFL football player, right?
Right.
Big guy, same weight class as me, and so we chatted, and I decided to sign up. And when I signed up, I started off at Trevor Smanich's gym in Northwest Calgary because that's where I lived.
Shout out to Trev. Love him.
Yeah, top-notch guy. And I trained for a little bit there, not for very long, maybe a couple of months.
Okay.
And then I was like, originally when I started, I was like, okay, I'm just going to train for fun, right? This one's just for fun. Well, like we talked about the competitive thing, it's kind of in you, right? And I was, I'm halfway coordinated for a big dude. So I was doing all right. And someone said, well, why don't you want to try like a little competition? So I signed up for a continuous.
Okay.
So I did Muay Thai, which is of course no elbows in a continuous. Muay Thai, kickboxing, and then they had full contact rules, so kicks above the waist only. So I signed up
old school.
Old school. So I signed up for the novice division of that, and then I kind of went in, and everyone's like, "Well, you should sign up for the advanced division too." I only trained like 2 or 3 months, so I was out of Trevor's gym, and I did that, and I won 5 of the 6 divisions. I got second in the other one.
Dude, that's a busy day, man.
It was a busy day. I don't like kicks above the waist only.
Sure.
These big ham hocks were not meant for that.
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, I did really well. And then I played hockey my whole life and at a high level and got some good trophies and stuff. And they're like this big. Then you walk out of a Mike Miles, Trevor Smanich event. I got these mother trophies.
Yeah.
Stack of them. Like,
Damn.
it was like I won at the Stampede, right? So, and Mike and Keith were at this event. And I remember Mike coming up to me afterwards, and how he's kind of quiet and soft-spoken, and he kind of came up to me and he said, "Would you like to try this for real?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I might." And anyway, I kind of
Dang.
Yeah, so I
0
kinda-
to 60
yeah.
fast.
So I didn't get into the training, like the fight level training right away.
Yeah.
I kind of started just like I was in my late 20s. I have a family, I have a downtown corporate job. So,
Right. This was just fun yesterday.
this
now
was fun yesterday. Yeah. So I kept kind of just training for a little while longer, and then I started going downtown to the downtown gym. He said, "You got to come to fighters class," and he was super patient with me because I don't keep the same schedules or whatnot.
Sure.
Like I had kids at home. I had at least 2 kids at that time when I started. So I'm a hands-on dad, so I got diapers to change. I got things like that.
Hell
My
yeah.
wife was super patient. I said, I can do fighters class a couple days a week, but I'll get in my runs. I remember running with the baby carriage in the mornings.
Sure.
6
Good for you,
a.m.,
man.
And then sparring at lunch. And
were you at school or working at the time
no,
as
I
well?
was working. So downtown corporate jobs.
Yeah.
I have a political science degree and an honors diploma in chemical engineering. So
Holy shit.
working in the
Okay.
oil patch, like a management level job. So
Man.
luckily I didn't get dusted up too much in sparring.
Sure,
Didn't
sure.
come to work looking too rough. But
Yeah. Okay.
so like that was kind of the fight part of it. But then throughout that time and then carried on a little bit into that, I loved watching the fights. Like I'd never seen this before. I mean, I helped, we'll talk about that later, with some of the promotion stuff, and I used to help get oil and gas guys to buy tickets. I'm like, you can go to the Flames game and hope that a fight breaks out, or you can come to a Muay Thai event, and I guarantee there's action, right?
And there's hockey on the TV
yeah,
over
there's
there.
hockey on the TV. Yeah. So anyway, I loved watching the fights, and they were entertaining. And I think it was 2003. There was a event planned at the Mawada Stadium, and it was a fundraiser for the tsunami that hit Thailand.
Okay.
A Red Cross fundraiser. I think it was Mike that was putting it on, and it got canceled. And I was like devastated. Like, why is this canceled? Like, I was looking forward to like the fights. Maybe at that time they were 4 or 5 times a year, maybe even more.
Right.
But it wasn't often enough.
Yep.
Fights were great. This is
Yep.
before UFC, all over TV, and
Right,
hard
right.
content to find. And I wanted to know why it got canceled. So I got involved. And that time they had the Calgary Amateur Kickboxing Muay Thai Association. So I started asking questions about why it got canceled. And a lot of it was politics and bullshit. It was some people on the Boxing and Wrestling Commission at the time, not the Combative Sports Commission. And it was some politics, Mr. Miles, who I was texting with just the other day. We're friends, so he's got friends, he's got enemies, and somebody was not friendly, and it didn't make any sense. They were kind of making up rules about why they couldn't do this event, And a lot of times at that time, and still probably, you can tell me in your gym, the fighters are young and they're in school. Whereas I'm a business guy with some education and stuff. And I'm like, this is wrong. This is not right. I started reading the bylaws and I'm like, there's no reason. This was around that time. I think they were making all the threats about the criminal code. Like, this is prize fighting and it violates the criminal code and we can throw you guys in jail and take your money from your event. And, there's no big cash dollars in this sport.
Okay, so this is perfect, to be honest. So most people would get something like that and be like, holy shit, I'm out. I didn't know I screwed up.
That's what happened. That's why it got canceled, because not that anybody did that, but it was threatening. It's like getting that mean cease and desist letter.
Right.
So that frightened everybody off.
Sure.
And I don't kind of remember all the between hockey pucks, lacrosse punches, and kicks, and I don't remember everything. So we'll see how it goes here. But so that's when I got involved. I think I took a position with CACMA at the time as the secretary.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. So when you were saying you asked some questions, were you just sort of like, was it out of curiosity or just like, this isn't acceptable?
It was out of curiosity at first.
Okay.
And then once I started getting answers, it became unacceptable.
I see.
So there were some other people involved in the board. I can't remember all their names, but some with some good backgrounds and that, were able to piece together some information. And I did my sort of own analysis. I remember pulling up the Boxing Wrestling Commission bylaws and all the things that go around with that. And it was just some made up threats, I guess. It's an amateur sport, so it's not prize fighting. And there's lots of ins and outs and loose things around that. Like North America, how we manage combat sports is so different than the rest of the world, and it's half of the problem.
Agreed.
More than half.
But
it's getting better, I think. But so that's how it started. And then so I started out as a secretary, sort of just participating in meetings and things like that. And then events got back going again. I don't remember if there was one canceled at any time or not. I mean, I know there was one that was moved to the reserve that might have been over capacity in the gym, but anyway.
Right.
So I remember some of those.
That was a long time ago too,
Long time ago.
That.
And it was not by choice. It was not like running from anybody or anything. Well, it kind of was, I guess. I was kind of just trying to make the fights happen. I mean,
sure.
The people are in here putting in their blood, sweat, and tears and their heart and soul into the sport. Like there ain't no coasting in Muay Thai. Like I remember that coming from being like, I played varsity hockey with guys that were ex-pros and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's the first thing I realized when I got here. It's like, okay, well, I thought I was an athlete and in shape, but this ain't nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so different.
So way different. Like there's nowhere to hide. It's just,
it's a good way to say it.
Yeah. It's the best of the best when it comes to competition and training and all that. Like people don't have any concept until you've done it.
That's right.
So I got involved, and then eventually, just kind of because of we talked about the competitive and the personality type that I am, I just kind of eventually sort of found my way to being the president of CACMA. So that happened, and CACMA was very Calgary focused, so Calgary Amateur Kickboxing, kind of mostly with Mike Miles' gyms. Lots of the members were through that.
Yep.
Helped around with promoting those fight cards, making sure the fighters had fights, and so I got involved a little bit in the promoting, helping Mike. Mike's obviously the master of this. I mean, he's the guy who kind of invented some of the processes.
Well, and back in the day, he was the only one around here.
He was, right? Yeah. So, I helped with some of the processes. So I always like to say I don't have any really great original ideas, but I'm good at making other things better.
Okay.
So he had some ideas, and I mean, he always still looked after all the fight bookings and things like that. But I helped with a little bit of process, just about how to make sure some of the logistics went a little differently. And then other guys came along, like guys like Trevor, and I'm sure, like I haven't been to one of Kieran's events. I'm sure he knows what he's doing when it comes to putting his events together. And everybody puts their own little touch on how they run it, and the logistics and the making everything happen.
Right.
So, and it varies from person to person how the process is.
And were you still fighting at the time, or were you done fighting?
I think I had barely just started fighting.
Okay.
So I had 10 fights over about 10 years. So I'd have a couple fights, gain 25 pounds, have a baby with my wife. My wife did all the work.
Sure.
And then, then get in shape and come back for some fights.
Right.
So
you got to at that point, you got to literally say, I have this much time I can dedicate to that.
And I always thought, I mean, even all the sports I played, fitness was always a challenge for me. Like I always put the work in and the effort, but I still like to eat and things like that.
I hear you.
I was a lacrosse player. I'm like, man, lacrosse would be easy if you could run fast. Kickboxing would be probably Muay Thai and kickboxing would be way easier if you just like stayed in shape.
Right.
Or even close to staying in shape.
That's
but
right.
I was like big cycles. So I had my first fight. I think it was 2002 was the first one. And it was out of the gym at Trevor's gym in Northwest, at the Ranchlands gym. And it was I trained hard. I lost, I always struggled with my weight. Like I had fights. My first fight, I was at 212. Second fight was 219. I had one at 229, 239, 249. By the time I got later in my career, I was like, these guys are too big. Like I'm a big dude, but they're freaking big dudes, like
Right.
6'8" with
Right,
freaking
right.
4% body fat, and
That's it. They just grow up.
Yeah, so I kind of mostly hung around in the super heavyweight division, but kind of started getting a little bit, having to cut a little bit of water, and it was easy when you're a bigger guy,
Sure.
to get into that heavyweight division. But
Right.
First fight was short and sweet. It was a minute and a half, and I was kind of disappointed because I was pretty fit for that one. I think that's not one of the pictures you had, but online there. But I was fit, and I wanted to go a little longer.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I kind of went.
I worked for this.
Yeah, I worked for it. And I really wanted to go. Like, and
Right.
People ask, and I'm sure you've had conversations about this. People ask about fighting, and like, oh, you must really hate that guy. I'm like, never once, not one time.
I'm too worried about what I got to
Yeah,
do.
yeah. And I got, I'm worried about what I got to do, and I've always looked at it as it's a physical game of chess. We're playing chess in there, and we both train, and we're going to find out what it's all about.
That's right.
I remember getting some of the early lessons right away from Mike. Like, so you're all wound up before the fight. He's like, okay, relax. Like, he goes,
Right.
you're going to have fought that fight before you ever get in the ring.
That's right.
Right. And that was one of the first ones. And then, the little tricks about, okay, when they come around to check your pads and stuff, your shin pads, whatever, he's, stand in the corner, lean on the ropes. Don't try and balance. That's a waste of energy. Like, it was all these little things.
Yeah.
And then lots, I'm sure most of those easy ones before the fight I remembered, but then you hear the clacker, try and get to your corner, get closer to your corner so you get more time on the stool. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't remember.
I'm in a washing machine.
Didn't remember any of that stuff. Cut the ring. Well, that'd probably be a good idea too.
Sure.
Didn't do
Hands
much,
up. Yeah, I could try that.
Didn't do much of that. Yeah. So I had a couple fights, on 2 or 3 that year. So I had one in Calgary, then I did one in Saskatoon. That was my second fight. Like a low level, like gymnasium card.
Okay.
And I was the main event.
Nice.
So
There you go.
I went from the first guy to the main event because big boys, put the big boys in.
Sure.
So another
Nice.
guy, we traded bombs. I finally saw the video of it here a little while ago, and my daughters are now like 26, 22, and 19. So they saw it and they, Dad, you're freaking bad back in the day. And I was like, yeah,
What do you mean back in the day?
yeah, exactly. So I moved pretty good for a junkie guy. Like, I was never super fit. And
Right.
But anyway, yeah, it was an entertaining fight, if I do say so myself.
Do you remember who it was?
Chad Zoutner was his name.
Oh, okay.
So Mr. Miles agreed with me, and he said it was a bit of a hometown decision. He was a big puncher, and I was a big kicker, and I put him on his butt a lot. And then the next time I was supposed to fight was at the Golden Gloves in Red Deer with Lyle Cheney. Shout out to Lyle. Yes.
Been on the
Great
podcast,
guy.
friend of the show.
Awesome guy. Awesome guy.
Legend.
Yeah. And the first guy I was supposed to fight was this Chad Zoutner guy. I remember Mike saying, well, he's not coming. Like, they scratched him at the last minute. He's not coming. I'm like, why is he not coming? I think it was 4 weeks after the last fight, so close enough.
Okay.
He said, well, he still can't walk yet from the fight with you. So I'm like,
Nice.
I feel like it was a win.
Yeah, we'll call that a victory.
We'll call it a win.
Moral win.
Yeah. So then got to that fight card, and my opponent was Leroy Marshall from Lion's Den or someone like that.
Okay.
I can't remember. Who's the guy, the white-haired guy with the ponytail? Laszlo Herzeg.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was trained with him.
Okay.
And so I was 219, so I bumped up a little bit. Still always a little squishy. That's always how I look, right? A little soft and white. And Leroy was a big dude. Leroy was 267 and the good kind of 267.
Okay.
And it was the only fight my parents ever came to. And I remember my mom saying, well, honey, when he took off his robe, I couldn't see you on the other side of the ring. I was a little worried. And I was like, okay, thanks, Mom. And anyway, I was scared. I was just flat out scared.
Sure.
And it was a kickboxing rules fight. So I kind of danced around, and he had little sort of snappy kicks. It was not a good fight. And I basically did nothing for 2 rounds.
Sure.
And Miles was like, he's not happy. And rightfully so. Like, he's like, you got to go, buddy. Like, giddy up.
Yeah, but look.
Yeah, but yeah. And at that point, I'd figured out that there wasn't much going there. You got to knock him out to win.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So I come out, and he throws a little front kick, and I swear I brushed it. Because you can brush it in kickboxing rules. You can't grab it. But of course, we train Muay Thai rules. So the video later revealed that I did grab the kick, not brush the kick. So I grabbed it, let go, went jab cross, and he was asleep by about here.
Oh, yeah.
He got an ambulance ride, and that was.
I think I remember that fight.
They put him on a board, and he went out he went down hard.
Damn.
Yeah. So I won, but knocked out as a result of an accidental foul. He won the first 2 rounds because I just danced around doing nothing. So he won. So, but felt like a win again.
Did you?
Yeah, did I? Yeah.
Did you know when you hit that one too? Like, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Like, sometimes when you hit that shot, like, you feel it down to your toes. It just lands perfect. Yeah.
Yes, I did. It was square and it was solid.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and he went to sleep. And anyway, he came back later that day, and I chatted with him.
Oh, good.
Again, that's one of the things too that's super important about this. Like, I played 3 sports at a high level. Luckily, lots of good guys in all those sports, but Muay Thai people and kickboxing, martial arts people are like just the first class, like just awesome.
Yeah, yeah, good.
Like it's like I couldn't say enough about the people that I've met in this sport. So yeah, so that was that
Something
one.
about getting punched in the mug,
Yeah,
eh?
I guess, right? Yeah. So then the fight career kind of went up and down. I traveled. I went to the what was it? I went to the IKFs in Florida a couple of times. I went to the. I had that was my first time I did 2 in a day. So I don't highly
Sure.
I don't highly recommend that
Nope.
at heavyweight.
Just out of curiosity, by this point, was there any aspirations or goals like titles or
Not
pro
really.
or nothing?
Not
Just,
really.
Just still going with it.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to. I probably would have because I'm a competitive guy. I would have kept going. But I
Right.
mean, and not through anybody's fault. I'll never say that. Like, if I'm going around the gym and I got this many fighters to train, the 35-year-old guy maybe at that time or a 33-year-old guy
Sure.
who's got kids, and like I can only put so much time into
Yep.
it. So I kind of got out of it what I'd hoped to get out of it. I would have, like I think you and I said off the air, like I'm 53 now, and if somebody said I got one for you in 6 weeks, I'm like, okay, when do we start? Like I would do, like I loved it.
Yeah.
I would do it again in a minute. But like I said, I'd probably be divorced.
Can you call my wife before I do?
Mrs.
Soften the
Finley
blow.
is a no go on that, and she's been the most supportive. Like for
Sure.
for me to do all the things I do, I couldn't do it without her. So that's for sure. But
there you go.
yeah,
Shout out
so yeah, then
to
the
Mrs.
fight
Finley.
career went up and down. Yes, shout out to Annie.
There you
And
go.
what else? I went to IKFs one time in exotic Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So
Oh, yeah.
So we won't go through my whole fight career. There were
Sure.
some of them were up and down, and fought a lot of big guys. And near the end, we can jump to the end. The last one was at 38, so I fought
Okay.
fairly late, I guess.
Okay.
And
That was only 15 years ago.
yeah, 15 years ago. Yeah, and that one was in Florida at the IKFs. And I had been off. A lot of these fights were like I'd be off for a couple years, so all kinds of ring.
It's your first fight all over again.
Yeah, starting all
every
over,
time.
right?
Yep.
And that kid was young. He was 18 or 19, and he was put together, and piles of testosterone. And
Sure.
everything. I had a good fight. Just as was often my style was I didn't go enough. Didn't set things up enough. Like you got just a little more pace, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
sometimes I think that was a product of I always had a little concern over my fitness.
Sure.
Not that I ever I got tired, but I never leaning on my knees out of gas
Right.
kind of thing. So that was just a mental block that carried me through all my fights.
Sure.
Unfortunately,
Well, and that'll happen when you take one fight in a
Totally.
couple of years. You got to
yeah.
gear up for it. Yeah, for sure.
Anyway,
Makes
so
sense.
that kid, he ended up winning. But I remember because his coach came in the ring. He says, "Congratulations for you. That's so awesome for you still being in the ring." He goes, "You're way older than I am." Like I was,
Thanks, man.
I was older than most of the coaches at
Sure.
those events, right?
Sure.
So anyway, it was pretty cool.
Did you know at that point that was your last one?
Probably not. I'm not sure. I don't even remember what became the end of it.
Sure.
Like sort of a couple of trips to Florida were, I think the last one I took my family, I was like, we're going to make a holiday out of this. Right. And so nobody came to the fights, and like I didn't bring my kids to the fight. They didn't need to see that.
Yep.
So that was, that part of it. So I was kind of, it was in my career where I have 3 kids, I have mortgage, I have a job, I have all those things. So anytime we can kind of leverage an event into a holiday or whatever. So we did that and had the fight, and then went for a holiday in Florida afterwards.
Nice.
So I think maybe those kind of opportunities kind of stopped happening. And then I also, I'm sneaking up on 40 at that time. And like I said, I have like a downtown executive level job. I can't come to work beat up
Sure.
too often.
Right, too often.
Yeah.
Nice.
No one ever actually really said anything to you. Actually, I think it helped a little bit of respect around the office. Like, what do you do in your free time?
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, it's not bar fights. So
That's right. Yeah, there you go. Hey, and so were you heavy, at the last fight around that 38 years? Were you still heavily involved in like at what point? At what point did it take over the not fighting into doing the rest?
There was
of
always a little balance between both. So
Okay.
I think it was 2006 when I was president of CACMA, the Calgary, local sort of association for a while, and then at 2006, I think was the time I took over as the president of Muay Thai Canada. I believe Mike Miles was president at that time.
Okay.
And so there was some of the struggles that were going on. I can't remember all the dates. I mean, there was things with Camtao was in Ontario. At one point in time, they have much more stringent guidelines government-wise, getting recognition through the ministries and all these different things.
Yeah.
And at one point in time, so they got shut down for their fights. So there was some, can't remember the name of the guy. He's not even involved in the sport anymore. But there was some sort of nefarious behavior, I guess, in terms of how they got recognition in the first place. So
Okay.
Mr. Miles has always had the very strong connections with IFMA. And, you can get into the alphabet soup of all the different associations.
That's what I call it too.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, at this point in time, I mean, it's IFMA and WMC are the ones that have the connections to the higher level, whether it's the IOC and all that stuff. So whether, I'm not going to debate how how legitimate everything is, but they're the ones that seem to have been the most organized in
Gotcha.
all of it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the Ontario group was sort of, and I don't ever begrudge anybody. Like, it's hard to get these events. So I think whatever way you can find the fights, you need to find the fights. Like,
Agreed.
it's like career can be short. You need to be lots of people promoting. I mean, look at even like professional boxing has like 4 or 5 different sanctioning bodies
Yeah,
too, right?
yeah.
So, obviously there needs to be safety and things like that are key. But so CAMTAL was kind of formed under some false pretenses, like basically a fraudulent letter was written at one point in time, saying that they had this recognition, and it was from somebody that wasn't able to provide recognition, and that flew with the Ontario government until they found out. And then they shut them down.
Oh boy, and they're just going to handcuff you forever.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
And they did. So they got put in the pill. And there's great people out there too. I mean, you're getting more and more exposed. I know it's you going out and doing some events out there. Awesome people. And the thing about Ontario too is there's more gyms in Toronto than there are in the rest of the country.
Yeah,
right?
no kidding. It's crazy.
Yeah. So then I kind of got in and I had a conversation with Mike, and and he'll admit, I think, that he can be polarizing character sometimes, right? So I was like, you know what? I don't own a gym. I don't have a horse in this race.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think that's kind of helped for me is like, well, people, I don't feel like anybody's out there talking bad about me, and I'm fine to handle any kind of criticism, but I didn't have.
Heavy lies the crown.
Yeah, right. And I never had any financial stake in anything, right?
Sure.
So I understand, like, you guys run businesses, you run your gyms. I think putting on fight events is a great, like, everyone has the right to, I'm an entrepreneur, like I'm a business guy. Everyone has the right to make a living and provide their family. And if you can do it in the sport that you love, go do it.
High five.
Do it safe. Yeah, high five. Do all the things you got to do. Make sure you do it right. But anyway, so that's, I got involved, and then I said, this association just doesn't have enough people. Like, it's the classic, and I'm involved in other sports associations as well. Too few people doing too many things.
Yep.
Now, we never fully overcame that, but the intent with that was, so I said, well, where are all the gyms? Where are all the fighters? And I said, well, they're in Ontario. So I remember making a trip to Ontario, and I remember meeting with John Suchart, Chris Q, I think Jeff Harrison, a bunch of guys.
Yeah, the classics.
Classics, totally,
yeah.
yeah.
Old school
I remember
guys.
meeting at one of the delis somewhere in Toronto,
Right.
and I was like, we need to get everybody on board with this. Like, let's, because you guys have lots more people. Even like Suchart probably had 3 gyms at the time. I mean,
Right.
his empire's kind of gone up and down over the years, like everybody's.
Yep.
So yeah, we started those conversations, and that's kind of where it sort of made some progress. I don't even remember the year that we changed the name to Muay Thai Canada. That sort of happened later on, but there was some communication back and forth with a little more communication back and forth with Ontario and
Right.
and the West, right?
Yeah.
I mean, really the hotbeds are kind of Alberta and Ontario, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
and then trying to sort of spur on some of the, getting matches back and forth. I mean, this is the biggest problem in Canada. Like, if you're in Asia or Europe, well, you're a train ride away from a fight in,
That's
Holland
right,
or
that's
wherever, right? Or a $55, Air Asia flight to Tokyo. All these
That's
things,
right.
Here, it's $700 or $800 that you're going to come from Toronto.
Yeah.
To
4 or 5 hour flight.
Yeah, 4 or 5 hour
Yep.
flight. So, I think there's been more of those cross country fights, but again, this is what's holding back our sport here in Canada, is just
The size of our country.
the size of our country, yeah, and
Yep.
and the population. Like, we do have a small population,
For sure.
because there's a very active fight community, obviously, in Ontario, and there has been here at times too.
Yep.
But the volume is just huge. So that was kind of part of one of my initial sort of goals, was to try and get everybody working together as much as we can. Right.
Did you find that was not the case when you first came in?
It was very divided.
Yeah.
Very divided. I mean, even, and a lot of it, and then there was like some hostility around how all those things went, and rightfully so. Like, somebody forged a letter.
Man,
And
that's wild.
and I don't know if I rattle cages because I said that, I'm fine. I got broad shoulders. I can take the abuse, but that's the reality of it. So that's what happened. And that was a long time ago.
Yeah,
And some of those people didn't know that had happened, and they kind of carried on with it. And anyway,
So sorry, and I didn't mean to interrupt, man, but I appreciate you saying rattle cages, but really what it is, like, for me, and I'll just come out and say it, is like, it just is what it is. Who gives a fuck?
yeah, exactly. No, 100%. It is what it is. It happened. I mean, that's
That's right, and that's where we are, and the more secretive it is, that the less things get talked about, obviously, right? Like, it's no point.
Yeah,
Who cares?
so I
It
mean,
happened.
that's why I'm kind of glad. Not that I came here to kind of pull back the curtain on everything, but there's lots of stuff that people don't realize goes on.
Me included.
In the background.
Me included.
And that's fine. Not through lack of understanding, or, it happens all the time where someone says, well, how did you guys pick the national team? I'm like, why isn't there this and why isn't that? Well, do you have any freaking concept of what it takes to hold an event, like of nationals title, a nationals volume and size. We did one once under CMTCA in Alberta.
Yeah.
We did get quite a few Ontario fighters come.
Yeah.
We went all the way to the level of, like, technically this stuff is supposed to have drug testing. We had drug testing at the one that was in Calgary.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it was held at the casino, the great
Central Casino.
That's right. And the old bowling, well, not the bowling alley.
Frank Sissons.
Yeah, Frank Sissons. That's
right,
where it was, right? And it was a massive amount of work, right? And nobody's getting paid for that. Like,
That's right.
We're like, these are break even, if at best type events.
At best.
Like amazing fights. There's some great athletes in Canada.
Yep.
And so it was a great event. And then, we were able to put on a couple of Muay Thai Canada nationals out in Toronto. Everyone's like, well, I'll move them out here. I'm like, yes, but the population lives out there. So
That's right.
If we want, not that I'm trying to, yes, in the best case scenario, you mix it around. You go to Winnipeg, you go to Calgary, you go to back, you move it around all the time. But the number of people are there,
right?
And then
that's best case scenario.
Yeah, and then depending what kind of things you can pull together in terms of putting the event together. So at that time, so I'm kind of skipping a few years ahead. Michael Reed came and got involved. So Michael trained at one of the gyms in from sort of the Suchart family, and with Jennifer Lanthier, and Mike is an educated man through banking and finance with a huge passion for the sport. And I let him very much run with things, and he did a really great job.
Yeah.
Websites and regulations, like all this stuff that nobody really wants to do.
That's right.
That the sort of non-sexy, the hard work stuff. And he put in endless hours for very little money to put these events on. Anybody who went to those ones in Toronto, like they were first class events. Like they were.
Is that right?
Yeah,
eh?
they were.
I didn't
really
go.
good. Yeah, we had 2 or 3 rings sometimes. Well-run events. I mean, there's always those sort of judging and reffing challenges,
Sure.
but not a lot. Like I was there, and there were not that lot. We held it in. Is it Mrs. Markham? I think Markham. So I'm not an East guy. I don't know.
Sure,
East
yeah.
geography,
Me neither,
but
man.
It's
Me
a little
neither.
suburb of Toronto.
Yep.
In one of the facilities that was there for the Pan Am Games, like big, huge, nice gym, space set aside for warm-ups, like first class, like really nice, nice place. Like, and
kudos to him.
Yes, and he was smart about sourcing out some of the things, because there's something that I never looked into kind of back when we were doing events, was some of the, like, whether it's tourism, Calgary, like I think Kieran taps into some of that. I've only ever talked to him a couple times on the phone, so I don't know him well.
Yeah.
But there are things like that, like whether it's sponsorships. There's sponsorships always important, but whether it's grants and things like that. So they had gotten some good support from the city of Markham to fill this awesome new venue they had. So if they had whatever, I mean, they weren't huge events. I mean, but they weren't like like the IFMA Worlds,
Right?
Like there'd be there's 300 or 350 fighters, which is
impressive.
It's no joke, right? For
Sure.
2 or 3 days. So and there are lots of people coming through there. So
And without the history as well, right? Like of having this is our 20th year. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, there's none of that behind
exactly,
it. Right?
none of that behind it, right? So so anyway, kind of back to the thing where I hear from people saying, how come we didn't pick the team with a national event? Well, you just have no concept, and then there's. This is all not. Everyone has, maybe when they're doing their fight cards, like I'm sure Kieran's got his crew, and Mike Miles does, and Trevor did, and all these other promoters that did their fight cards have their sort of core of people, but people come and go. And there's some people that stay. There's the home for the hardcore where they stay forever.
Yep.
But it's hard to get those people together. And like I said, there's not a lot of money in this, right? So it's hard to pay people, and sometimes they come and go. So it's a big undertaking to put these events on.
Sure.
Especially at that stage, like when you're talking 300 plus fighters and things like that. So
That's right. Well, we've touched on the topic then. How is the national team picked?
It's varied. So sometimes we would take, when we had those events, we would try and take like top tier guys from the ring, from those teams. Now, again, there's no funding. There's nothing like that available. So it's great to say, hey, you got first in your division, you're going to Worlds, but there's way more to that. For a lot of reasons. So I was always of the opinion, now I've been to a couple of the world championships, not as an athlete, thankfully, just as an administrator. So you get to see, like, that's a spectacle. If you ever want to go to that, I think the one I went to, first one was in Bangkok in 2010, 10 days of fights, 3 rings with the freaking cat strangling music going all day long, live band, like not recording, band sitting at it was
Sounds like heaven.
It is. It's totally cool. 1,200 fighters, 180 countries, like, food lineups, and it's when you find out how polite Canadians are, because the Canadians basically starved because everyone else is pushing in front of them.
Sure.
For the food. But so a lot of times before those times, used to be like Mike would just, because he had the connection to IFMA. So
Right.
he's like, hey, I'm going to take some fighters, and this is who's going to go. Like, this is all the way back to like the Jason Fenton and Chad Sawyer and those guys.
Jason Gillane.
Those guys.
Yep.
And then at one point in time, like actually on one of the fight cards I competed on, I actually fought for a spot. We were trying to do a little bit of a competition. So we like, hey, send somebody from the east, send somebody from the west, and it's all about like who can afford to go. Really, 'Cause there ain't no money in this, right? So nobody's getting sponsored.
Hey, you qualified. It's in 3 weeks. Give us 10 grand.
Yeah, bam. So I ended up qualifying the one year. So I had a fight, and thank God I didn't go. Like I think it was my heaviest fight. It was 249. I fought a guy from Suit Charts Gym in Red Deer.
Okay.
So we just made a qualifier fight. A guy named Roland Sempri, super fit, awesome guy, but luckily he didn't like leg kicks much. So anyway, that one was short leg kick fight. Nice guy. Anyway, so I fought on that one. I qualified first spot, but I couldn't go.
Sure.
And I think Misty Sutherland qualified first spot. She fought Jen Lanthier, beat her on that spot. But sometimes we did those type of things. It was so there's no set way of how to pick this team. It's very ad hoc, right? And then now with sort of the absence of nationals for the last little while, it's kind of been a bit of a committee. So sometimes I've used a committee and I'm not, as much as I'm involved in the sport, like don't come and ask me the details of the rules.
Sure.
Like you said, I know we're going to talk about fighters and stuff. I'm not a technical fight geek in this sense.
Yeah.
I'm like more like a professional administrator, I suppose.
Yeah.
And like I have some enthusiasm and passion for the sport too. Like I think there's just the benefits of it are all immense.
Yes. Yeah,
so,
agreed.
so in recent years when we've sent teams, it's been a bit of a committee. So I'll talk to some of the people I trust, the guys like Jason Fenton, Mike Miles, Trevor Smandage, Clifton Brown, Alin from Ontario.
Right.
I can never say his last name, so I'll just say Crew.
I got you.
Everybody
Yeah.
knows who we're talking about. So there's a group of people, and it's not always the same. And I'm like, hey, we got a couple people interested. Who do you think? And then there's been different approaches over the years too. I mean, often like I've been there, and I remember seeing Team Russia. I think this was in Langkawi. Team Russia with 2 fighters in every weight class, A and B, with a different uniform for every day of the 10 days.
Really?
Like shorts, and because they throw their money at it. Like
of course.
They fire money at sports. Like there's
of
a
course.
sport, we're going to win. They're not any different than the Americans, right?
Right.
And then like just the experience of being there. Like, so I have 2 kind of approaches in my mind. And sometimes it was like, okay, sometimes you have to go there and see this and lose out in the first round and be terrified by the Ivan Drago guy in there slicing the pads in half.
Right.
Because I saw that. Thank God I wasn't fighting. But, so you kind of have to sort of build up to be able to compete at that level.
Right.
Also knowing that in Canada, we don't get that many fights.
That's right.
Right. So there was one approach, like sometimes we'll send some younger fighters so they can just dip their toes in here and see what it's like. But then other times we've kind of thought, well, maybe you need to be experienced enough. Like, should we go if we're not going to compete?
Good call.
So
we just sending lambs to slaughter. What's the point?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a balance between the two.
Yeah,
like,
I hear you.
You don't usually just win right out of the gate.
Sure.
So that was like conversations I had with Clifton Brown often. So shout out to Clifton Brown.
Shout out to Clifton.
Who I owe a phone call back to here recently. But yeah, so that's kind of a different approach because, some different people see it different ways. So, and lots of different ways. So there's no set way I'm picking this team. So.
If you could have a set way for Canada, what do you think it would be?
Trials.
Yeah.
Like an event.
Yeah.
You earn your spot.
Sure.
You earn your spot, right? So, and because this is the great thing about fighting is on any given day, anybody can win. Like there's stuff on paper, but you never know, right? So, I mean, those upsets and guys who win and really bring it, and you just don't know what they're doing in the gym. How are they training?
Right.
Like you may have saw him last time and he lost to this, this guy. And the next time you see him, he looks like a different fighter.
That's right.
Like, we're dealing with young athletes, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of development that can happen with an athlete, depending on the time they're doing away from the competing, the competing ring. I mean, we all know that's when the development happens. You don't really learn. You learn from losing.
Right.
You learn more from losing than you do from winning.
Right. And being under fire and under pressure.
Totally.
Yeah, there's lots to learn.
Yeah, all that stuff to learn.
But as far as the punch and the kick and the block.
Yeah, the development, that happens in the gym.
Right.
That happens in the gym, right?
Yeah.
Train hard, fight easy.
That's right.
So.
Yeah. And as I tell people as well, leave the statistics for baseball. It doesn't really work for fighting.
It doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
It really doesn't, right?
Yeah.
And you could even fight like records too. Like, you'd see the records and, I saw some of the, where you're matching fights and things like that too. And you're like, and I never really got involved in it because it wasn't my area to be involved in. But you look at someone's fight record and it's better now because you can at least find some video footage and things like that in most cases. But back in the old days, that wasn't available. Like there was very little footage, but some guys 12-0. Well, I don't know. Did he fight 12 6-year-old girls? Like, I don't know.
Right.
Like, right. So,
right. Yeah.
No disrespect to 6-year-old girls.
Of course.
But like that's
you don't know.
It all depends on your opponents.
That's right.
So,
that's really it. Yeah, for sure. You talked earlier about like the Wrestling Commission and the Calgary Combative Sports Commission. I still don't really know how that even works as far as the commission with, like, let's just say Muay Thai Canada and then the promoter. Like how is all that
good question?
work?
Yeah. So I mean, all these fights are happening for the longest time. Like Mike was the promoter here, so he obviously we did a lot of pro-am events,
Right.
which I think are the best. So you do an amateur portion of the fight card, you do a professional portion of the fight card, and the way at one point in time the commission went from being the boxing and wrestling commission, because there was boxing and wrestling, to
Right.
becoming the combative sports commission. And I
I
can't
gotcha.
remember the years that happened, but so they had. What was I saying? So that anyway, that happened at a certain point in time. So I'll talk about that actually before
Sure,
I jump into
sure.
it. So I was involved in that. So as I had holding my position, eventually I think it was Candy Schachter, who was the chairman of the commission, the Combative Sports Commission at the time, and they actually wrote a new bylaw. So they kind of called in a bunch of, they called stakeholders. So I remember going to meetings, sitting at City Hall, Silly Hall, as I like to call it now, sitting in there and going to these meetings, and they wanted to learn about the sports and the regulations and all that goes around it. And then at one point in time, so I'm not sure exactly all the order of it all,
Sure.
but it used to be that you could pay like a per bout fee for your pro fights. So you could say, okay, we're gonna have 2 pro fights, and it was something super reasonable. Like it's like $100 per pro fight. Oh,
Okay.
sure. Here you go.
Sure.
We'll have a couple good pro fights to main event this card.
Yeah.
And it was awesome, right? And at some point, I don't know if it was fully UFC or MMA was certainly making traction, and I don't know why, but they started changing the structure of this, and they weren't going to allow that anymore. So basically, the commission became expensive, real expensive. So I don't know if they saw that there was, and it was the commission. If you read some of the bylaws, I'd have to read the latest and greatest. Was never intent. It's not to make money. I mean, let's be honest. Like, we won't go all full politics here, but there's no such thing as government funded. It's
Right.
taxpayer
That's
funded.
right.
So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see that a lot. Everything is funded.
That's right.
Governments don't.
We are the government.
Governments don't make money.
Right.
And commission is a branch of the City of Calgary government. So they
Okay.
they're not intended to make money, but somehow, somewhere, somebody thought that they should. So they started cranking the shit out of all the fees to the point where you couldn't do pro fights anymore. You couldn't do 2 pro fights on a fight card.
It's
because
insane.
of the cost.
Yes.
And I'm sure, I think I've heard you chat about before. Then there's, okay, so you got to have your person in the ring. You got to have your representatives, and they're all getting per diems, and they're all getting like it's just.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're all getting $500 a crack, but it adds up.
It's a financial risk to hold a fight
financial
card in
risk.
Calgary, or I don't know where else.
Yeah,
but Calgary's.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a financial risk. So the money starts adding up. It becomes cost prohibitive. But anyway, that's kind of where there hasn't been a whole lot of pro stuff in the city, right? And
Now, do you happen to know, like, has anybody like Mike Miles or anybody, like, have they discussed any of this with any people actually in the industry, or do they just
like the commission,
yeah?
they have, but they haven't in a long time. So at that time, many years back, we had discussions about it. And so what happened was, so for example, like in boxing, so boxing they're in the Olympics, they have a recognized thing. So basically amateur boxing they let amateur boxing regulate themselves.
Okay.
So they can go, and if we're a couple guys, and I don't even know what the association's called, like Boxing Canada, we decide we can go hold a boxing fight card in the parking lot right now, and nobody will ask any questions.
Huh.
We trust you to manage yourselves.
Okay.
We won't discuss whether or not they should or not make that trust level.
Okay.
But anyway, so we did get to that point with the commission at one point in time, and I believe it's still in the bylaw. I'm a little out of date on it, but where there were certain associations that were approved, so you did not require sanctioning from the commission for amateur events. So Muay Thai Canada is one of them. The World Kickboxing, so WK is one of them.
Yeah.
So again, there's lots of this overlap between kickboxing and Muay Thai. So this is also part of the problem. So Muay Thai Canada, because of our affiliation with IFMA, needs to be Muay Thai.
Right.
We can't have kickboxing too. Like kickboxing is technically different.
Yeah.
Whether
Yes.
whether there's a difference between ice hockey and field hockey, I'm not sure. It's probably not even that.
Right.
It's a difference between contact hockey and recreational
Of course.
hockey. I don't know. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
these little things. So then it's now it gets complicated to start having multiple sanctioning bodies. So okay, well I got some kickboxing fights, so I need to use WKA, and they're not cheap, but they're affordable. And Muay Thai Canada was always very affordable, very, very reasonable. And we would then you need multiple. So now you're saying, okay, well I got a WK says you got to fly their guy in from Florida or wherever too. So now it starts getting expensive.
Why?
And messy.
Why do you need these things though?
Yeah, good question. I mean, that's what every association has their own requirements, I guess, in terms of what they expect. So from Muay Thai Canada, we don't make you fly in a representative. There should be a representative there. If I'm in Calgary, I would go. But again, I'm not the rules guy. We have the Alberta Ring Sport officials. They're there to administer the rules.
Yeah.
And here are the Muay Thai Canada rules that you'll be roughing under today. So that's their job. They're trained to do that. So, and that's No, in the perfect world, if there was, a representative in every province from Muay Thai Canada, we would make sure that there's somebody there all the time to oversee the weigh-ins and such. But really, the officials do that, and they've done a great job here in Alberta, where I can speak the highest, the most to it.
Sure.
I know they do the same in Ontario. But then, so you got these multiple bodies. So anyway, at one point in time, the commission had, WKA as for kickboxing. Now the trick becomes now WKA. Well, they've got Thai boxing or whatever they call it within their association. So they've kind of catered guys like them, or some other one, WKU, I think. Some of them have a little more catered to the variety of events.
Right.
So they can, okay, well, we can't call it Muay Thai, but we can call it Thai boxing, and it's same.
Sure.
Or K1 or whatever. So
Yeah.
if somebody has, if you're putting on a fight card and you don't have a whole bunch of fighters that all want to fight Muay Thai rules, you can put a couple kickboxing fights. But you can't really do that with Muay Thai Canada because we have to be in our lane. It's like Hockey Canada doesn't regulate field hockey as well.
Right.
So you just,
I see.
Complicated.
So it almost, from me, again, from the outside being ignorant, it sounds like, if we do elemental P tennis and we look after tennis, well, what about tennis and ping pong? And then we could include that. And what about also, what's that silly loud one? Pickleball, right? Pickleball. All of a sudden you get to pull sort of everybody under the umbrella.
Yeah.
Right? Is what it sounds like.
And when you start doing that, it gets tricky on regulations because it should all be they're all a little bit different, right? I mean, ultimately for the fight game, the basics are, qualified officials, blood work, qualified, I said referees, a safe ring, things to keep the fighters, distance around the ring, some of those little details to keep the fighters safe, proper weigh-ins, all of those things. Like there's, ambulance and a doctor on site.
Right.
Those are kind of the basics of checking the box. And I haven't heard of anybody skipping those steps lately.
Thank God.
I mean, it's happened, but
Sure.
And even things like blood work, to be honest, you get your blood work done at one point in time. That doesn't mean unless you're not to get too daily.
That's true.
It can change between now and fight time. But
That's right.
Anyway,
So good for 1 year.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot can happen in a year. Right?
That's sure can.
So those are some of the sort of obstacles of that. So there was cost, and then at one point in time they started cranking up the commission costs. But because of this sort of allowance, I guess, within the bylaw, you can if you do a WK sanctioned event, you do a Muay Thai Canada sanctioned event, you don't need to deal with the commission. They might ask. Usually the venue will ask for a letter because the venue, if it's in the city, will say, hey, we're the Deerfoot Inn Casino, we're the Frank Sissons Casino, or wherever, TELUS Convention Center, places we've all had fight cards, we want, the city wants to know, or the venue owner wants to know that you've kind of jumped through the hoops.
Right.
So what would happen then typically is Muay Thai Canada or WK or whoever would provide a letter saying that this event is sanctioned under the Muay Thai Canada rules and we're going to follow those rules and regulations. And as such, we didn't put that wording in, but then the commission just says, okay, you're fine. That's good. You're allowed to. We've given you permission to sanction your own events. And that's how it runs right now. So
Okay, I see.
the only person in Alberta doing Muay Thai Canada events now is Mike Miles, and he hadn't for a while. He went WK for a while and Waco, I believe, for a bit too. So but now, we provide a letter stating that you're going to fight under these rules and regulations, and these are the expectations. EMS, all that stuff.
Yes.
And the commission stays away. So there's a lot of chat right now. I've actually been messaging Mr. Muay, even though I've kind of moved myself from my position here. I'm still I'm stayed on as sort of past president and maybe advisor in some way. And
Sure. That makes sense.
I don't know if I can actually leave, but I'll stay involved somehow, some way.
5 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
It's just not in me. It's not in me, right?
Sure.
So we'll see how that goes. But there's been some discussions now because Alberta has been behind on how they regulate. They don't have like a provincial commission. They've never had part of the government sort of overseeing it. It was basically based on local commissions. So Calgary had a commission and Red Deer had a commission.
Right.
And they would regulate it. And then you can go to other places. You can go to a reservation. And they could form a commission. It's very loosey-goosey on how it all operates.
So just using, and again, Muay Thai Canada as the example, just picking one, why do you need a commission if something like Muay Thai Canada is there? Or
You shouldn't.
Okay.
Except for professional.
And why is that?
Good question.
I just don't know.
Good question.
Honestly.
I mean, the proper reason is probably that there's money involved, I guess, because technically professional is being paid. So this is again part of the problem between here and other parts of the world. So in Europe, for example, they've got A, B, C, D class. If I want to pay my D class fighter to fight another D class fighter for $100, I want to pay them both $100. Who freaking cares?
Yeah, of course.
Ain't nobody getting rich off this.
Right.
And that's kind of how it flies in other parts of the world. Here, and this goes all the way, I'm a hockey guy too, goes through all kinds of other sports. So for example, you play hockey in the WHL, you get paid $100 a week. you're ineligible to have an NCAA scholarship because you're considered professional because you got paid $100
Right.
bucks a week.
Right.
Now, there is lots of transition things going on with that right now in the hockey world, trying to change that. And then the same thing, Olympics is supposed to be amateur sport. Well, all the freaking pro hockey players, all the pro tennis players, they all play in that.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a, like, the money doesn't mean anything, to be honest. Like, if you can get paid, get paid.
Yeah,
but
of course.
it should be about making fair matchups.
Right.
So I think that's where some of it gets involved, as people start looking at, they start seeing dollars involved. And like I said, sometimes it depends on who's got a spot on the commission in terms of, I don't know what kind of name they want to make for themselves.
Sure.
Again, they're not supposed to make money. It's supposed to be a break even type venture, even, and sometimes, I mean, there was an event a long time ago, and I think when MMA first got started here, sort of in Calgary,
Yep.
kind of getting going. And there was a fight up, and the commission, there was some people who were long gone from it, were kind of heavily involved, and so in the MMA community, they made it so there was no amateur MMA. If you wanted to fight, now there is amateur MMA around the world in various places, but if you wanted to fight, you had to turn pro.
Right.
So what happened here is they had a fighter who said, okay, I want to fight MMA. I've been training for a while. 0 fights. Whatever he'd been doing in the gym, great, but we don't know what caliber that is. So he was making his pro debut, which was his octagon or mat.
His debut.
His debut.
Yeah, period.
They matched him up against a guy from California, also making his pro debut, but amateur MMA is available in California.
Right.
And he had 15, 20 fights. And he laid a licking on this guy, and not the good kind.
And there lies the problem around
there
here.
lies the problem, right? So
Gotcha.
you have to have a healthy amateur system to build a healthy professional system. Whether the professional system makes money or not, or the fighters make money. I mean, I never begrudge anybody the right to make a living, and if you can make a living off this sport, then have at her, because it's fun as hell, right? But those are some of the challenges, right?
What's the point of a commission?
Regulation, right? So
isn't that what Muay Thai Canada would do?
It is. But at some point, it's the point of any government.
Sure. Yeah.
So again, it depends, and there's been many cycles of it throughout the years, just in Calgary alone. Cycles of whether it's overreach or things like that. So I mean, they've kind of crippled the professional. There's no pro fights coming here anymore. Like maybe the UFC will come once every 5 years or something.
How do we fix that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I mean,
and I'm sorry if these are putting on your spot, man. I don't mean to.
Not at all. I mean, there's been times where they've asked me to come in. It's been a while where I had come in and give a presentation, and a lot of times the presentation was just what I've talked to you about, is people didn't understand the history of it or how it was formed or what the challenges were. So it's been quite a while since I was asked to go into the commission and talk to them about that. I don't think anything has really changed. I mean, ultimately, I'm torn on whether or not there probably should be some provincial regulation on this. It should probably be a provincial commission or a provincial association.
Makes sense to me.
And they, in my mind, would be, okay, we're going to have, whether it's the boxing community, the wrestling or whatever, you go through and you can choose, you have to check up on them, make sure they're, verify checks and balances, making sure that they are, okay, all the Muay Thai Canada fights, did you guys have this, this, and this at the fight cards? Like, these are the reasons we've trusted you to, self-police yourself.
Right.
Like, I'm a big believer in that. Like, let people self-police themselves, but at the same time, you have to check up on them.
Without a doubt.
Make sure they're doing it right.
Sure.
I mean, you've worked in the karate world for a long time, right? So some of these fight cards have to get commission sanctioned and all these different things.
Yeah.
But I'm not a karate guy, but I've walked by a couple where there's like some pretty legit scraps going on.
Sure.
And nobody's checking up on that.
Definitely not regulated.
Definitely not regulated. But and that's because karate, like things like karate and wrestling, all have, I mean, not necessarily Olympic recognition, but they have, or taekwondo.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you had a taekwondo, but I mean, some of those guys, those crazy spinning kicks, like some kids have had their noggins slapped pretty good, right?
Yes.
There's some heavy shots happening in there, but the commission doesn't come to any of those.
That's right.
And that was one of my arguments.
That's right.
Made. And not that I want them to,
Right.
I want everyone to be safe. I don't want.
But that's a good point.
I don't want some kid getting hurt by any stretch. But there's a balance between the two. So why are you?
I never even thought of that, man.
Why are you picking on the Muay Thai fights? Well, because we put ours in a casino and bring fans in and charge 25, 30, 50, whatever.
And it's called full contact.
It's called full contact. But you have a tournament. There's probably a karate tournament happening in Calgary every weekend.
And people getting mangled, sent to the hospital.
Yeah, and I guess I've heard about the Kyokushin and all the different ones. Like, there's some hard hits happening.
That's right.
So, but nobody's there. A lot of those ones, there's not even an ambulance or a doctor there.
No.
Right? So
no, a first aid course person.
Yeah. At best. So again, I don't want to raise any flags
you're right.
for the city to start showing up at those things. But I would just say those people in that community, like, do the right thing, get a doctor there.
Right.
Or a nurse,
just do the right thing.
Do the right thing and make sure everyone's safe, right? So
dang, man. Yeah, good call.
yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing though. Like, I'm a hockey and lacrosse guy too. There's not an ambulance parked outside every hockey rink. And I remember saying, was it? I don't know if you ever met a John Panyakaritis.
Oh yeah, you bet.
So little man, right? And I remember seeing him, and I read his book, and
Yeah.
it was a book from the old days.
Yeah,
Right?
you
And
bet.
He said, soccer, Muay Thai is very much more safe than soccer. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, in soccer you might get kicked. He says, in Muay Thai you expect to get kicked.
Good.
So I was like,
call.
great, like smart guy, right? But I mean, me as a guy who played like high level lacrosse and hockey, I spent plenty of time in lacrosse with my gloves off, and I never felt more safe than in the ring. Like there's one ref and one other opponent. You're playing lacrosse or hockey or whatever. There's 10 guys on the ice,
Right.
a couple of refs maybe, high speed boards, all that stuff. So ultimately, the sport is pretty safe,
Yep.
just by nature of it, as
Yep.
being with the contact and such. That's dangerous. But,
Sure.
So
Yeah, good call.
but you can get run into the boards playing hockey. You can get a stick, a cross check, a elbow, punch,
Head-butted.
all those things.
Yeah,
can happen
tackled.
there
You got
too,
it,
right?
man.
But they don't park a doctor at the arena, and they don't park an ambulance outside
Right.
either, right? So
That's right.
I
Yeah.
can go to all kinds of things, everything. I won't
That's
I
all
won't get into well, maybe I'll dabble into like a police one with we had a fight card one time. High level fight card. You probably remember some of the ones that happened at the TELUS Convention Center.
Yes.
So I was part of bringing that there, like classy, right? Like we were attracting sponsors, oil
Yep.
and gas sponsors, and there was a fight card where I got into quite a debate with a superintendent from the Calgary Police, because at one point in time we got told we needed to have paid off-duty police officers there.
Right.
Well, why is that? And this, let's be honest, the fight community doesn't always have the nicest. I mean, there's the odd person.
A couple people rough around the edges.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for rounding me up on that, right? So I said, well, this is why, because some of the rough around the edges people come to your events. So I'm like, okay, well, it's tight to make any money or break even on these events anyway. And now you're going to throw this, thousands of extra dollars, and and I backed the blue.
Yeah, thousands,
I
obviously,
backed the
yeah.
blue. The cops, you couldn't pay me enough to do those jobs. They are awesome, and they do a great job, and I support them fully.
Preach.
And especially the ones that are working in that segment, whether it's the gang or the undesirables, right? So they started having to come to our events. We did eventually manage around it and figure out how to cover the costs of it. But my argument with them was, well, okay, well, these guys, same guys, they go to Flames games, they go to movies, they go to the bowling alley. Do they have to have paid duty officers there?
That's right.
Anyway, he didn't like that.
Yeah, sure.
This is my political science background and sort of ability to form an argument.
Nice.
Anyway, I didn't win, so regardless
Yeah.
how good my argument was, and it was fine. It became an expense that we figured out how to manage, and we did. So, but
Do you
it's a
find
challenge?
Did you have to like is it like, okay, there's a fight card in Vancouver, okay, so we got to talk to Terry. The rules are weird, and then next week there's one in Edmonton, and Dougie, his are a little weird. Like, is there commission rules vastly different? Is it city to city?
It can be. Like, I mean, I didn't deal too much like in Vancouver and BC. Like, they would rarely come to us. If anybody did a card out there, they kind of often it was a little underground. Because they made it. It's coming along. Like Jason Fenton and some of the guys.
Adrian
out there
Sheed,
yeah, they're making some efforts to get recognition
Yes.
and follow. Jump through the hoops and make things a little more structured. So that's and there's more of that going on because they have a provincial organization. I don't remember the name of it. It's a sports and tourism group or whatever that are involved in it. So it varies from place to place. So I would often hear about the stuff mostly in Alberta.
Sure.
Right. So I mean, Edmonton has a commission. I mean, guys like Lyle. I don't remember ever having to deal with a commission in Red Deer. I mean, Shane Morgan used to do. It's probably still does his fight card.
Saka,
This and
yep,
that.
yep.
So I haven't heard too much about those. I think a lot of them they've been so long standing that Lyle knows what he's doing, and
Sure.
Shane knows what he's doing, and like I think Vanessa's doing events in Airdrie, so I'm not sure what kind of guy. It's all amateur stuff. They don't do any with Muay Thai Canada, so Vanessa, Muay Thai Canada is the answer. Anyway, but
So
I don't know why they don't. I don't hear from them, but anyway, I'm not as involved as before. But
Sure. So is there certain criteria? Let's just say Calgary. I'm Muay Thai Canada. I want to do it right. I want to have Muay Thai Canada sanction. Is that what it is?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. But the commission's like, they don't want this one rule, this one thing. That's I don't know. Does that
Commission
ever
won't even
happen?
look at this point. It doesn't now, and it shouldn't unless if I was structuring it, I'd have a provincial organization, whether it's commission or whatever, and you choose your Muay Thai Canada, your WKs, and all those different people, and they have a set of regulations that get reviewed once, maybe twice a year. So Muay Thai Canada in Calgary, their rule set is accepted. The commission will not crack open that. They won't look at that unless we happen to make a change, which we haven't. But if they wanted to, if we did make it, if they don't review it on a regular basis, they'll never know if we make a change. I mean, maybe the onus should be on us to communicate with them.
Sure.
But
sure.
the frequency of events is far less than it used to be. There was changes. Muay Thai Canada, some of it was changing the lengths of the bouts, right? So now there's really, under Muay Thai Canada rules, there's no 5-round bouts anymore, because it aligns with IFMA and it aligns with the Olympics. So remember that as they push towards the Olympics, and I hope it makes it there, but I'm not sure that it ever will. Like, it's just not, the number of people that we have involved, it's too small. Like, there's just not. So some of the things, like, they changed they mixed the word, like when they went through their IOC recognition, like, it's not Muay Thai, it's Muay Thai.
Okay.
One word. Okay?
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
It's like Canadian hockey.
Right. I got
right?
you.
So it's a bit of that, because you remember, when you're looking at the Olympic level, it has to be a worldly sport. So when it becomes, it's like like I said, like, ice hockey or Canadian hockey or whatever, they have to make it sort of look a little more universal to everybody. And then some of it is, like, I don't know the ins and outs of the, like, amateur boxing at the Olympics anymore, but I think they're all pretty short fights. Like, we can go watch, I don't know how many, Mike Tyson is going to hopefully knock that Paul kid's head off, but
right, yeah,
I don't know how many rounds.
Please.
Please.
I got $40 on it.
Shut him up. I'll tell you, I'll do it for like $100,000.
There you go.
Not even. Seriously. I know a lot of guys do that. Like, I don't know. Well, anyway.
Sure, I got you.
Shut him up.
Yes,
but
please.
those guys, so like a pro fight, a boxing fight, like, they're 10, 12, whatever rounds they are now. But in the Olympics, they're much less. So it's the same. It's a little bit. Remember, Olympics is about money.
Yes,
It's not about sport.
Sure.
It's about money and TV and all those things. So now the Muay Thai bouts have been shortened. So I believe, like, the pro level or the Olympic level Muay Thai bouts are 3 by 3 or they might be 3 by 2.
Right.
Which is a short fight. Those are the fights I fought.
Yeah,
like, those
exactly.
are like the Bush League old guy fights. So they've done that. So they had to make that change. Like, in Thailand, I assume you're watching the fights. I mean, the high level ones are 5-rounders still,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But not at the Olympic level. They've had to alter the game to make it that way. Just like we play on Olympic ice for hockey. Nice big ice, because we like the speed and the fast.
Yeah.
And not everybody likes the hitting, although I
Right.
think they do. But so there's some tweaks to get it to this level of recognition that's gotten there. So now, because Muay Thai Canada, we're pushing for our sort of all the recognition nationally and provincially, we have to align with the parent company, right? Which is IFMA. So that puts some restriction. Like, I love seeing a great 5x2 fight, like a title fight. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
But we become restricted when we have to try to align with everything. And of course, historically in the world, even though Canada has a small population, organizations like IFMA and such, they care what Canada does. I'd say, again, not getting into the politics, obviously our reputation has taken a beating over the last tenure of a certain character.
Right.
But normally, Canada is very well thought of in the sporting community. Oh, they do things safe and they do things that. I mean,
right.
I mean, we have our warts like any other country, but even though we have a small population, not a ton of fighters, when IFMA can say, well, Canada's on board, that matters in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Less than it used to, but when they first started the process, it mattered a lot.
Gotcha. So it's an interesting. We talk about the landscape of Muay Thai right now, the changing of the Olympics and stuff. Now I know I'm talking as a traditional guy, and we mentioned you get the Olympics and money starts getting involved. So does that change what Muay Thai is going to become if it goes into the Olympics? Let's just say yes, because that's what happens to Taekwondo and everything else. Yeah. However, when you look at the landscape of Muay Thai in general, it's changing. One championship, the small gloves, the 3 threes.
So
right?
you tell me. I don't watch that. I mean, I should and I will. But why? Why has it gone to the gloves? And they're doing it in a cage, I take it too. So
usually in the ring.
In the ring is good.
But in a cage as well.
Yeah, but so why the small gloves? Like, I mean, because I've heard you on some of your podcasts with other characters, and if there's an adjustment to fighting with different gloves, like I don't. There's an adjustment just to training in the gym. With your fluffy sparring gloves versus a nice tight ouncer or something like that.
Right.
So I can imagine for those fighters, like that makes a big difference. So I don't know. What's your thoughts? I'm gonna fire it back at you. Why have they changed that? Is it TV? Is it more knockouts? I mean,
money.
Yeah. Right. So all those things that like attracts. The sexier the fight is, I mean, let's be honest, nobody wants to see two guys dancing around, sort of tapping each other.
Yeah.
So if somebody goes down, that draws eyeballs, which draws dollars, right?
Yeah.
So,
for sure. I don't disagree. So then, if let's say Muay Thai makes it to the Olympics, do you think that changes Muay Thai? I mean, even in Thailand.
I don't know if you'll ever change in Thailand. It's like, I mean, I use the hockey connections and relations all the time. Like, I mean, hockey is changing here. but it's still there's still
I know nothing about it.
well, yeah, I mean it's still there's still some of the it's faster and different than and this kids are skilled and players are skilled. There's been changes. I think there could be some changes in Thailand, but it's hard to say. I think there's a long ways off. Like I think they're still going to have their stadium fights and they're going to be there
Gambling
and the gambling and all that. Like I can't imagine that going away. It could, I suppose, but I think it's a long time before that you see that level of change because it's different there too. Like it's not like kids are fighting for different reasons. Like they're fighting like here it's recreational and competitive.
Your parents pay for you to go.
Parents paid for you to go. Yeah. And then you're good at it and you have a competitive spirit to feed.
They'll pay more.
Competitive spirit to feed is different than feed your family feed.
Right.
Right. Which is what
Good call.
Was where people start there, I believe. Right. A lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that different than, like the Mike Tysons and the fighters in the world that come out of sort of rough upbringings. It's their way out. Right.
Right.
It's go make a living and help feed the family and things like that. So I think Thailand still, I believe, I'm sure they do still, that's still a big part of where they're sprouting their fighters from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's different. Like, so I don't know how many of those guys care about the Olympics.
True.
I don't know. They're thinking too much about that. They're thinking about where's the next meal coming from, and I got to fight in 3 weeks again.
That's right. That's right. Very true. Very true. I guess like it's almost like there is two divides. There's the Olympic Muay Thai and the not Olympic Muay Thai. Yeah. I wonder how that's going to play out. Like
I do too. Like I said, I would love to see it get there, whatever form it comes in. So here's another analogy or comparison. So I'm also heavily involved in the sport of lacrosse. So lacrosse got recognition at the exact same time as Muay Thai.
Okay.
So the same year, we got the recognition. Now I don't know I think lacrosse has been booked in as a demonstration sport, maybe at the upcoming LA Olympics.
Okay.
So I'm an old school lacrosse guy. I played since I was 7 years old till I was almost 40. Aligned with my lacrosse, I'm still involved. I coach. I do all these things.
Oh, okay. Nice.
I played old school days, wooden sticks, indigenous made, no face mask. This is a rough sport. Like, the only sport in the world you're legally allowed to hit somebody with your stick.
Okay.
It's tough. Shit. It's tough, right? So Muay Thai is tough.
I didn't know that.
Lacrosse is tough too. So it's got recognition. So that's how I grew up, that level of sport. There's box lacrosse and field lacrosse, and men's is similar, women's is different. But they've come up with this hybrid game, made for TV, made for Olympics, which they call, I think it's called sixes. So it's this combination. So in Canada, we're great at box lacrosse, which is indoor lacrosse, full contact, all that good stuff. Field lacrosse in the States is on a big grass field, still contact, different. Anyway, they've created this hybrid game. And I'm probably more of a lacrosse purist than I am a Muay Thai purist. I like the pure style of Muay Thai too, but I don't follow it as closely.
Yeah.
So it's been changed to me, it's not lacrosse. It is lacrosse, and my lacrosse friends aren't watching, but it's just, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with it. And I don't know that I want to see Muay Thai go that way. And I think it has to go that way to get anywhere in the Olympics, unfortunately.
Well, and how you just cringed about talking about lacrosse is what I do about Muay Thai, right?
Yes.
I don't mean that, but I'm sorry.
I know, and I don't know if little kids are growing up saying, well, I want to go to the Olympics for Muay Thai. I don't know. I mean, maybe they do. I mean, it hasn't got there yet, but I mean, I think kids go like, I want to have a career. There's always, like I went as far as playing university hockey, so I got a little bit of school paid for. Like,
right.
I remember I've told this story a million times on probably every podcast is, getting really upset about getting cut from a hockey team one year. And my dad said, stop crying. What are you so upset? You and your friends are all going to make the same amount of money playing hockey. That's fuck all. And he wasn't wrong. So I played
good
now.
old school dad.
I play now with guys that played 1,000 games in the NHL. You all end up in the same beer league at some point.
There
right?
you go.
So it's kind of you choose your path, I guess. Yeah. So hey, I got some money paid for. I went to like a pro training camp, not a training camp, but like a conditioning camp. I played with some big league guys. So to me, that was good. And I think there's Muay Thai athletes need to think the same way in terms of, well, what do I want to get to? So some of them are like, hey, I just want to get good at this. I want to win some tournaments. Maybe I want to turn pro. Maybe I want to win a belt. I don't know how many of them right now are thinking that I want to go to Olympics, whether that's the young kids coming up through Milton Muay Thai. He's got that great young team, right?
You bet.
And others do too, but he's
very prominent for sure. Easy to say that.
Very prominent. Yeah. And then whether it's like these guys that are, some of the, the big Muay Thai names who are fighting in the stadiums, I don't know if they're thinking about Olympics. Unless maybe there's $1 million paycheck at it, because nobody's making that now.
That's right.
And even and who knows, like even our Olympic athletes, I think like maybe the track athletes, they make some money nowadays. Like, they didn't used to, but now there's some more money available. So, so I think maybe the money will attract people at some point.
For sure, always.
If it gets there.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Not everybody is into the combat sport.
Well,
so who knows?
And And I guess I just came to this conclusion only like 1 or 2 podcasts ago. Like I know what, in the world of Muay Thai, one championship is polarizing. It's not traditional Muay Thai, but that doesn't mean you don't have to dislike it.
No.
So same thing. Maybe
Is it entertaining? Right.
Right.
That's-
Every Friday morning.
You're seeing some technique. Okay.
Right.
We went smaller gloves. Maybe sometimes we do it in a
Gets
cage.
crazy in a brawl. But not always.
Not always. Yeah.
And it's still fun. And
Well, there's some big names fighting in there too. Like
That's
some,
right.
Like legit guys. Like it's not just a bunch of
That's right.
brawlers. Like we're gonna lock you in a cage with
Right.
little gloves. I mean,
they want that one championship, contract and money and stuff as well. Yeah. And but I guess what I'm trying to say is like instead of just resisting it, like I sort of have that feeling, but I got rid of it. If it goes to the Olympics, it's gonna fucking ruin Muay Thai. And like, well, why can't you just have another fork? Maybe you want the Olympic way, go that way.
Yeah.
If you want to fight 5-3s for pro title, go that way.
I think that's what it has to become.
Yeah, just love it all.
And I think it will too. I mean,
Yeah.
like you still have I always go back to the hockey thing. Like there's hockey in the Olympics, but it wasn't in the last one.
Right.
Because there wasn't the money involved. I mean, there's still great sport playing all over the world.
Yeah.
And there is in Muay Thai too. Yeah. If you want to do the 5x3s, and you're a Canadian guy or American guy or whoever, and you want to take your run in Thailand and all different things all over the world. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, choose your poison as long as there doesn't have to be one or the other. I don't think so.
Well, and kind of like the podcast, like I'm trying to inflate everyone's tires. Like,
yes.
Like just get behind all of it for
There's no
Canada.
right or wrong in this.
Right, just get behind it.
It's about sport. It's about competition. It's about improvement. It's all those things. Money is great if it comes. Not that like most Muay Thai fighters, they'll give you the same advice as my dad. You're not going to make a lot of money doing
You'll
this.
spend it.
And they all know it. Everybody knows that. Like nobody's going into this for the bucks.
Yeah.
Right. So especially in North America.
Right. But just get behind it, all of it.
Yeah. Just get behind it, all of it. I agree.
I agree. Yeah. Awesome.
But safe, somehow sanctioned. I don't like the word sanctioned doesn't. I don't say you have to use this organization. It just needs to be like just check the boxes. Like
Perfect.
No, make sure your ring's not going to collapse.
Right.
Don't let the young kids do headshots early. Like there's so much information on that. I mean, and trust me, like I've done all the headshots in every sport there is, right? Between punches, kicks, and pucks, and you name it. But there's some of those things like you got to protect the kids. Like
I'm uncomfortable with juniors getting punched in the head.
Yeah,
I'm
super uncomfortable with it too. And at the same time, it's like watching them go tap tap tap, and their body is okay. It's not the sport, but it's a step to somewhere. Okay, it's getting in the ring.
Yeah,
it's getting all that used to. I mean, another quick story. I mean, she might be an interesting one. I'm not sure she's involved in more. Is Kelsey Andrews? I don't know if you remember Kelsey.
Oh yeah,
Andrews.
you bet, of course.
Kelsey Andrews. I was at the Langkawi 2013, I think, World Championships where she won a gold medal for Canada. She didn't fight for that long, and she's a big, imposing woman, strong, fit.
Yep.
And I remember she was fighting like, some fighters when she first started fighting Muay Thai. Was doing really well in schooling them. Well, she had almost hardly any fights. She was an athlete. She had all that behind her, but her background was she was a collegiate wrestler. So
I didn't know that. Okay.
Getting onto the mat and all the mental thing that happens with that. Like this is we're getting into the ring. Like, I mean, how many people flop before they even get in the ring? Like this is a mental game.
Right.
And that's the only reason I went anywhere in any sports. Like, I mean, I didn't go anywhere in Muay Thai, but I think that I didn't have the physical abilities, and I love the competition, but I don't feel like I got psyched out too much. Sure, I should have fired more. And
sure.
All those things. But
you've mentally been there many times.
Been there, yeah. So, someone like her who had been on the mat for hundreds probably of matches, the one-on-one matches, wrestling, had a huge advantage getting into the ring. So whether it's that with the kids, if the kids are starting out and they're tapping with body shots with body pads on,
yep.
That's the step. That's a step towards that. They do not need to be taking headshots.
Agreed.
There's no junior fights that should be taking headshots. You can progress it as you go, whether it's no knees or elbows or whatever it is, and pad them up. And there's lots of debates on pads too. Like headgear is super debatable.
Yep.
The benefits of that, it adds weight to your head and how you turn and get hit. So I mean, I'm not a scientist when it comes to that stuff, but I think there can be don't push those kids too quick. Let them do the body shots for a long time.
Yeah, forever.
Now they've been in the ring, and now they're still going to get hit, right?
That's right.
So that's a different stretch, and then you just progress. And
I agree.
Everyone's in such a rush to get to the peak, and I don't where do you think the average or the prime age is for a fighter these days? Like, when are you in your prime? Like, you see these Thai fighters, they got 200-300 fights by the time they're 20 years old.
Right.
Again, different scenario. They're fighting for their rent, and
that's right.
Things like that.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, like who are the guys that are doing great, and how old are they? Are guys washed up by the time they're 30, or does it depend if you've had 200 fights before?
Of course,
before
of course
it
does.
like the wear and tear, right?
Yeah,
so.
for sure. So we were talking earlier about messages. Don't send me any messages. I'm sorry if I'm talking politics. Don't get mad at me. But I did get quite a few when I had the conversation with Tim Lowe. Did you catch that podcast?
I did, yes.
I'm just curious, and I don't want to put you on the spot or ask you to answer for anybody, but there seems to be some friction between WBC and IFMA. Do you know anything about that?
I know very little about it. So, I mean, I can tell you what I do know. So I did speak with Kieran. He called me because he was doing an event and he wanted to be in the city. And Muay Thai Canada is on the list as a company, as a organization that doesn't require city sanctioning, right? So you can just say, it's a Muay Thai Canada event. We can do what we want.
Wait, is that in Calgary?
It's in Calgary.
Shit. So I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that right then. So you don't require the Calgary Competitive Sports Commission if you're Muay Thai Canada?
No.
I'm sure you said that, and I just didn't hear that. Holy shit! Okay,
Or
okay.
WKA, and there might be others too. But
Okay.
those are the two main
Okay.
ones.
Okay.
So if you do one of those sanctioning bodies, the city doesn't oversee it.
Okay.
They'll-
Okay. I
they
recall.
may check in on you a little bit, but it's not. You
Right.
don't have to pay for everybody. So Kieran did come to me, and I was like, "Geez, like I don't know Kieran really. I mean,
Sure.
I know his name and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Had a good chat with him. Seems like a nice gent and all these good things. And he's obviously doing some stuff to push things forward. But I never really got a straight answer. I'm like, okay, this is not the kind of thing that I can answer for you, Kieran. So let me take it up the ladder. So that's me going to Stephen Fox and guys like that, and basically said, yeah, that's a hard no. And I'm like, okay. And, I didn't get a lot of detail into why. Like I know in Ontario, Muay Thai Ontario, which is of course affiliated with Muay Thai Canada, took a very hard stance on that. And they have much more stringent regulations in Ontario. So they're like, yeah, we can't have you guys fighting on these different types of events. So is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. I have my own sort of shallow opinion on WBC. The B stands for boxing, right?
Yep. Yep.
That's what a lot of my position is based on.
I got you.
Why are they sanctioning? Call it boxing and Muay Thai are different.
Very true.
So it's this is again back to what I talked about earlier. Like everyone's making up their little Thai boxing rule or whatever they want to call it, so they can work around these things. And again, maybe it's not right or wrong, but you kind of have to pick a lane. And yeah, I mean, WBC has made their living on boxing, and I get that you want to dip into that, but then form another organization and call it boxing or something, or Muay Thai, or then
I got you.
They're not for whatever. And these are political reasons that I assume goes back to somebody's grandpa in Thailand. Like this,
Without it.
I honestly,
I assume you don't know the answer.
I honestly don't. Yeah, so I honestly don't know the answer. Like
No.
I know I've heard people say safety things have happened, and you can pull out a safety incident that's happened in
Everything.
anything, right?
Yep.
So I'm like, let's be realistic. And this is sort of the perspective that I like to bring to things. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, there was a terrible thing that happened that one time on so-and-so's fight card. I'm like, yeah, but there was a terrible thing that happened on everyone's fight card. Like, let's be real. Like I hear you use that phrase a lot. Let's be real. And, and that's right. Like, let's be real. Like, look yourself in the mirror and say that. So like everybody's had an incident or some maybe varying degrees. Or a mismatch or whatever. Unfortunately, those things happen.
They
When
do.
There's only two people in a ring. It's so much more exposed.
And half the time you don't know till it's go time, right? You don't know. You find out.
Exactly. So there's all these things. So I don't have the answer for
good.
that. I was
No, no
just
worries.
told that from my boss at the time is that's a no go, and that's why. So
My genuine question out of ignorance is there some alphabet soup fighting? Is that part of it?
100%.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
There is. And I don't know. That's a different level than me.
Sure.
Again,
sure.
like
There is with everything, right?
organizations care what happens in Canada to some extent. We have a very small number of fighters compared to a small number of gyms compared to the rest of the world.
Including our neighbors to the U.S. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, they seem to be getting quite organized.
Without a
terms
doubt.
And again, this is back to my lacrosse thing. So the Americans want to win. So if there's something that they think this might go to the Olympics, well, the wallet is open. I've already seeded in lacrosse. So the same time as Muay Thai, lacrosse got recognition. So lacrosse Canada has lots of the same, I would say, challenges that Muay Thai does. So we have a lot of fighters and enthusiasts like me that are involved, and that's all great, but really it's an organization and it's almost a business, and you need business people. So for example, Lacrosse USA has hired a former NFL executive to run it because it's going to be in the Olympics, so we're Americans, we better freaking win it. So that they are throwing money at it, they are running camps, they're running programs, whereas here in Canada, lacrosse is a Canadian sport, it's an Indigenous sport, but that's not the same thing happening here. We still have people running, there's some great people putting tons of time, but it needs to get to that next level.
Sure.
I tried to make Muay Thai come to that level too. Like I'm not a fight geek. I can't tell you all the ins and outs of the rules or who you should match. but I
Can't know everything. The president, the
no.
president doesn't do every job.
No, and what I got frustrated with is what I'm good at is building teams, right, and helping those teams, put the right pieces in the right places. I mean, for a long time, I think I found a gem in Michael Reed. He had a lot of the stuff that the sort of the detail-y websites and organization stuff. He was great at it, and he had a little team underneath him. He ran a little bit because of our distance. He was in Ontario, got a little disjointed at times. But there's just not enough people. Like if we can get the right, and I've tried it several times with in the last few years with Muay Thai before I kind of decided that it's time for me to step away, was trying to rally the troops to get enough people who want to do things. Like we need an accountant on staff, we need a lawyer on staff, we need an administrator who's good at writing political jargon, or not political, but sort of legal jargon for documents. There's some of these things like all the jobs are important. They're not all sexy, but they're all important.
Right.
And the thing doesn't go anywhere without all those boxes being checked.
So otherwise, we're just Mickey Mouse, like.
And it's been very difficult to do. We haven't done it yet. So
I see.
And I often think that why I got involved with other gyms too, like going to Ontario, I thought, well, there's more people. Maybe this is different. Maybe, maybe I need to really be talking to Romel, because I think often you can get the people when you have kids and parents. Whether it's like, I guarantee there's got to be somebody who's. Who can check some of these boxes. And for some of them, if you are an accountant doing the annual return for Muay Thai Canada, is a piece of cake.
Sure.
Whereas for me, it may not be.
Right.
So there's and then many hands make light work. So if you can divide it up and make everybody play their role, then it goes a lot faster and gets you there. So there's lots of hoops to jump through here in Canada. Whether it's now you need recognition in every province, and there's some. I'm not sure if the guideline has changed about. You need representation in every province, but you need representation in different regions of the province.
Right.
And then,
sounds like such a pain in the ass.
Well, it is, and then you're not going to. This is why I don't know that it's going to make Olympic level for Canada, especially because we just don't have the population. Like if I say, okay, we need, we need to make sure we have at least 30 members in the Wood Buffalo region of Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's possible.
Right.
So we can't check that box. So with these government checking the boxes for governments and such. Along with it can come funding, right? So I mentioned, we all know hockey gets lots of money because it's the big and sexy thing. I'm involved in lacrosse. It was the national sport of Canada. Now it's the summer national sport. They don't have all that. They're not well funded at all.
Sure.
And they're more organized than Muay Thai is. So I've seen the warts of that association too, like how it's got struggles. So it's hard for me to imagine Muay Thai getting all the way there. But I'm not saying it can't happen, but the community needs to pull together and just sort of put any differences aside and what is the goal here?
Agreed.
You can make money on your fight cards. I think that's great. You should do that, but you should also we have to push the sport forward. So
yeah. No worries. This is just my buddy walking in for a 1-to-1 here pretty quick.
Cool.
Now, so a couple things just before we're finished here. Now that you're on the other side of it, you're not officially wearing the crown anymore. If there was 3 things that come to your head, the 3 things you would like to see change. Not about Muay Thai Canada, but in Canadian Muay Thai. What do you think? What are those 3?
Oh, geez. Communication is one.
Yeah.
I don't know what the form is. Like I told you, we talked off the air about, I don't hear all the complaints about things. So, and a lot of times people are doing it all through social media. There's a few chicken shit people who send messages that never make it to me when they have my phone number and my email. Like I will talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime, but anything. I got nothing to hide.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to have that communication. So I think the communication, whether it needs to be some sort of standard one. I'm still an old guy, so I do email. So some kind of standard way to communicate. I think that's important. That's the piece that's the biggest piece that's missing.
Okay.
And then, sort of so communication, I think, is the biggest one. I have a hard time thinking of the other ones. I think that's the start of it. And then just sort of creating some unity. So again, I think that stems from the communication. And then people need to be upfront about their objectives. Like if you want to make a living, again, I'm a business guy. If your focus is cranking out fight cards and making money, have at her.
Sure.
But if you can help drive the sport forward, if there's some kids that have different goals, they have Olympic goals, get them on your card. As long as you can help you do what your goal is too. So
right.
Yeah,
I gotcha.
Yeah, the communication and unity. I think those are things that we really need. I don't know that it'll ever come.
Come to the table, but keep your guard down. Relax for a second. Let's just have a chat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I tried to do for all these years. Like I can go to a fight card, any fight card, anywhere, anytime, and nobody. Not that I'm sure there's people who say bad things about me, but I don't have a horse in the race other than I want to see it do well.
Yep.
Like I don't make any money off this. Never have. Never will. So I don't have I have a career that pays my bills.
Right.
I have other things that I do that provide me financial things. So I just want to see athletes get opportunities. I want to see gym owners be successful. You guys are businessmen. This is a challenging business. I want you guys to have lineups out the door of people coming to learn this amazing sport. Because it is an amazing sport, and it builds confidence, it builds strength, it brings all the things. And I work in other sports too, like I coach in lacrosse, and I think that you know, the benefits of a martial. Everybody should be studying a martial art, whatever it is. I have a favorite one, Muay Thai, right?
Sure.
So. I think that's, I want to see all the gyms be successful in their own way, whether that means great big fight teams or just teaching moms or whatever it is.
Yeah,
so
nice. Well, there you go.
That's the kind of guy I am.
Proper.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
How does one become an official with Muay Thai Canada?
Well, so here in Alberta, it's a little different. So we don't really have Muay Thai Canada officials. We've had this organization, the Alberta Ring Sport Association. I think Mike Zentek is probably leading it up still.
Shout out to Mike.
Shout out to Mike and all, and Lyle and all the guys that are part of that. Again, super challenging trying to get attract people into that group. I think I've seen a few more. I haven't been to a ton of events lately, but the ones I've seen some new faces.
Yeah,
I think it's good. That's a great way to give back to the sport. Need it desperately.
Yep.
So in Alberta, it's through them.
Okay.
In Ontario, which is kind of, these are the two sort of Muay Thai Canada presences, right? So they do have Muay Thai Canada officials. So they have, I can't remember her name. It's Laura. She's got a good Romanian last name, which I'm not going to.
I know who you're talking about. I don't know her last name.
Laura's awesome.
Yep.
She knows her stuff anyway, so she can get in there and ref for big boys. She's great. Yep. She's been to IFMAs a few times, so done some big league fights. So there's a group there with Muay Thai Ontario, which is a bit synonymous with Muay Thai Canada, so you can get through them.
Sure.
I think Muay Thai Ontario, so there's been some change in leadership and such there too. So they're a little more, or they're pretty organized because they have to be because of regulations and such.
Sure.
So those are a couple places to sort of take the next step.
And so are they outside of Muay Thai Canada? Like you guys do your own thing, make sure you're legit, same thing, or do you keep an eye on them? Or
no, we try to, but I mean that's kind of why I started getting out there, was because like this is the bar in Ontario just based on government regulations, right? So if we can align with that bar, we're pretty good everywhere else. Yeah. Right. So we're trying to align with that bar. We're not all the way there. Gotcha. So they are the flagship, I guess, of the and it has its ups and downs as well. Yes. They're the flagship of the Muay Thai organizations, I would say, in Canada. Like I know there's WBC around, and it seems to be, there's how things are run. I can't really comment. Right. I mean, Kieran's obviously doing some good events and things like that. So I don't know the ins and outs of that organization, but. Yeah, so I mean,
makes sense. It's not your organization.
No, I don't know. So
you're not doing it for money.
So I can't say, but the Muay Thai Ontario has legit hoops to jump through that they are meeting. So
makes sense.
I can't. If you can meet those ones in every province, you should be good, because we're still in the West. We're still in the Wild West, so we're working a little bit towards some more government regulation here. I think I think it needs to have that to some degree. I'm the last person to ask for government overreach, so I don't want to see that. There's a way to do checks and balances, but if we can come in Alberta with a similar structure as what they do in Ontario, we should be able to easily meet the Alberta requirements.
Gotcha. Okay.
And hopefully in other provinces too.
Right. Yeah. So here's what I was getting at. Real quick story, top 3 question, and then we'll call it a day here.
Sounds good.
So here's what I was getting at. So my fighter, Chris McMillan, had a fight way back in the day. Now, so he fought Magnus Andersson, who's now out of Mexico, by the way.
Yeah. Where was Magnus from?
Sweden.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So now before that fight, a couple fights before, Chris kept winning by split decision. As a coach, I'm speaking as a coach back then. I was becoming pissed because I'm like, he's doing everything he's supposed to be. How the fuck is he winning only by split? By the way, my ignorance, and I said this on a few podcasts ago, I also was too ignorant at the time to know that all strikes were counted as equal. So, I tried to be a Muay Thai man a little too much, right? And it doesn't matter. That the rules are the rules, and those are the rules, right? Go ahead. So anyway, and then he fought somebody before Magnus, who was just spamming overhands, doing illegal moves. Chris beats him up, drops him in round 5, breaks his arm, and wins by split decision. And I was like, how is this happening? Which leads us to the Magnus fight. So I thought it was a close fight. And as a coach, I always assumed Chris lost unless it was very clear, just so I wasn't the guy in the corner being like, what the fuck? I didn't want to be that guy. So I just always assumed Chris lost. That way, if he won, yay, we win. I was sure he won that fight, and he didn't. I was like, damn, okay. And all night, I got people bugging me. Dude, what the fuck? All night. It went on from Mexico, New York, Vegas, Thailand, people all night messaging me. Dude, what the fuck? I rewatched the fight in the morning, and I see Magnus's arm go up, and you could tell he's like, yeah! Like, he was surprised.
Yeah.
And I admit that set me off. So what did I do? I went right to Facebook.
Love it. You gave it the 24-hour rule, it sounds like. So that's what the in sports is. As long as you didn't go like 5 minutes afterwards.
Right. I tried to do it correctly. And obviously that wasn't right. And I know that now. But my real question, I guess, which kind of was where the official thing was my real question, and maybe it came across as ignorant, was who's training these officials? Because it wasn't that one fight. It was like a lead up to like, what the fuck is happening around here?
And I'm trying to remember the timing of that. I mean, I do vaguely remember. And again, I'll tell you, I'm not a fight.
Sure.
So when you say all strikes count as equal, okay, Jay, if you say so. So like, because I'm not the guy. Like I
your word for it, Jay.
I always thought like kicks scored a little better and things like that. I thought that to myself.
I thought that,
and I think that it depends where you are. I think it depends where you are. So in terms of regulations, just what's on paper. But then it's all what does Dana White say? Well, don't leave it in the hands of the judges.
Very true.
Right. So there's that. But not that I want to say that, because I mean I've seen fights too where I ask myself the question and I'm not about to volunteer to be a judge either. That's a tricky thing. I don't even know how they do it. But training is something that we've talked about. So again, here, Alberta Ring Sport is what happens here. Muay Thai Canada out there, I'm not sure what or Muay Thai Ontario, I'm not sure how they're training their fighters. But we know that in training, in these things, you have to do reviews and you have to train them. You have to look back, learn from your mistakes. And I don't know that that's happening. I don't know, because a lot of the refs are like, I don't want to say volunteers, but they're pretty much volunteers, because it's not there's no money in that either. Like
agreed.
Kids reffing hockey, lacrosse, ringette, basketball, baseball, they make more money doing that.
Sure.
Like,
and without them, there's no Muay Thai.
And without them, there's no Muay Thai. So I don't want to push anybody too hard. So I have had people come to me before and say, okay, what the hell was going on here? Or this guy just. My biggest concern would be an official keeping fighters safe. That's number one thing. So if somebody's not keeping a fighter safe, that's something. So I've made suggestions before about let's everything's video now. Let's go back. Like, how often? I've asked the officials that. Like, how often do you guys go back and review? I know they have a little meeting and a breakdown afterwards, like, of how the events went or how the bouts went. So I don't know how. I haven't had the been privy to sitting in those and hearing how the discussions go, because I'm sure that there's some you pull off to the side, everyone cracks a beer, and it was like, what the fuck were you watching? Buddy who made it split. Right. So, yeah, I mean, there needs to be some uniformity in that. So when you do, like, again, I always refer to my other sports, which I think is what had made me semi-successful. This job was I have a broad experience, so I can see what other sports are doing. So there's like certifications. This is something, there are certifications for coaches and referees and things like that through IFMA. I've tried to sort of pry that out of their hands to use it here. We don't have access to 100 Thai guys with 1 million years of experience to do that.
That's right.
So those things, and again, like these things, they've spent money to build these things, so they cost money. We don't have much money to pay for things like that. So there's definitely an opportunity. Let's look at it as that. An opportunity or a challenge.
Well, and I don't mean to
like. No, not at all. You're not coming off that way at all. So.
And it was so long ago, I don't even care anymore. Yeah. Right? I was a stupid idiot back then, and it's just fun to look back on.
But I mean, the short answer is, to my knowledge, there's not a lot of training, not enough anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And not through anybody's fault. It's just sort of just availability, and like there's always a shortage of referees in every sport.
Yep.
And and this one's extra tough, right? Because it's okay, a hockey guy or a soccer guy misses a call.
Right.
It's one thing, and here you got
pretty thankless.
Yeah, and here you miss a call, and it's
a big one. It's a doozy.
Lights out, or somebody who's poured many hours of weeks and such into training doesn't get the result that they maybe deserved, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
Now on I don't want to just talk about like, well, where do they get this learning? On the other end, I did not do that correctly. I got emails, I got phone calls. I'm upset with. Let me put myself in this position. Before I decided to take Facebook and be dumb about it, what could I have done, or what should I have done?
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily what you should have done, but I'm going to say what should be available to you is a mechanism to voice your concerns. Now, there are regulations about what you can protest and what you can't, and usually to protest, this one is one rule that I do know, is that there has to be some sort of error, and it's not an error in judgment, but it's an error in, did they count the scores wrong?
Right.
Did they, these kind of things. It's those type of things.
A foul that changed the fight.
Yeah, that you can protest, and you can't say, well, I thought that punch was pretty hard.
Right. Yeah.
So there's some pretty black and white, simple things that you can actually protest or complain on. So the other ones are just
Just sort of
not
feels
there.
like you're not allowed to say, do your job better or you're in trouble.
Well, yeah, exactly. Don't be sorry, just be better, right? So that's one of my daughters says that all the time. So so there should be a mechanism to respectfully file that kind of information. So again, I go back to my sport. I play in lacrosse. I coach a junior female team. We do referee evaluations after every game, and there's also an email where we get to provide that. There's some check boxes that you got to check how they do this, this, and this. I think that would be something that could be valuable because if you don't get feedback, again, so you could definitely have a comment session where you can maybe. I've gone off a little bit on some lacrosse officials before,
Sure,
and you've forgotten more about Muay Thai than I know, so you have some knowledge too that you can do that. And if you give yourself the 24-hour rule, settle down a little bit, and you can put those in objective words instead of 4-letter words.
Yeah.
But check some boxes too. Was the official in the right positioning? Were they this? Were they that? Were they this? And then I think an evaluation process would be super valuable.
Be logical, not emotional.
Yeah, and something very available. I think it should happen. It should happen for every bout, right?
Good call.
Otherwise, how are you going to improve?
That's right.
So
that's really the bottom line. Yeah, good call.
And again, just need people to do these things, right? So
That's right. Well, learn from me. 24 hours and leave the social media alone.
Yeah. So
Last
just
thing.
because you care, you're passionate, and you put the work in, and your man did too. So I know Chris.
Sure,
You always
sure.
put the work in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Never had to ask that guy to be in shape.
Nope.
Last thing here. Top 3 fighters of all time. Who we got?
Yeah. So you kind of tipped me off that question was coming, as I knew it would too. So like I said, I'm not a super fight geek. I'm pretty tight in the Calgary, the Alberta, the Canadian community. So I've got there's lots that I think of. One that I had the privilege of seeing fight in Thailand was actually Clifton Brown.
Clifton Brown.
So Clifton Brown
Legend.
is an example of a champion inside and outside of the ring, in my opinion. So yeah, definitely Clifton.
Good call.
I thought I've got to put a female in there, and she's kind of faded from the community and probably hard to find now. I don't know where she is, but Erin Lindley.
Oh, man, I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, Erin Lindley came to play all the time.
Yep.
And just high-level skill. Went to Thailand, won I think world championships a few times, and just entertaining. I don't know what weight she fought at. She was a small
Quite tiny.
person, but quite tiny, but just thunder.
She, my first time sparring her at Mike Miles when I was there for a few years, I legit, after that sparring session, I've never forgot my mouth guard. She rattled my teeth so bad.
yeah.
Like, how? You're so little.
Yeah.
That was an eye-opening experience.
I I could go on for a lot. So there's a bunch of characters. He's gone from the community too. I might go over 3. I might go with 4. But
Sure.
one was Nick Ring.
Nick Ring.
So Nick Ring, I had a good experience. We have time for a quick story with
You
Nick.
bet,
So
man.
when I was training as a fighter, those were some of the guys I trained with. Was Nick Ring, Jason Fenton, Jason Jelaine, Trevor Smandich.
Golden era of that
Some
gym.
of those guys, I missed out on the Chad Sawyer level till later on. Chad came back
Right.
and had been boxing for a while.
That's right,
And
yeah.
I remember doing a boxing drill with him, and he was slick, right? He was slick. I heard it was slick as a Muay Thai fighter. I never saw him, but then when he came back from boxing, extra slick.
Right.
And I remember doing a drill with him, like a slip pick drill, and he was just like, "Wait, just slip this punch." I'm like, "Poof," he just kept me every time. And he's like, no, just slip the punch. I'm like, I am.
I swear.
I swear I am. I'm like, you're, and I eventually stopped him, and he's in my age bracket, a little bit younger than me, but I was like, you gotta have to slow it down.
Yeah, yeah.
But my Nick story was, I remember training, and we used to, fighters class was, I think 4 to 7, and after that class was often a cardio kickboxing class or maybe a beginner's class, and we were doing training, and we. I was one of the bigger guys training, and Nick was, he's not as heavy as me, but he was like, okay, everybody partner up. And I could just see him. He's looking around the ring for me, not because I'm an easy target. But he wanted somebody big, like some
Right.
train with. So I'm like, oh, hang on, where's my partner? And then he always find me, it seemed. And fitness was never a strength of mine. I remember
Right.
we had to do like wheelbarrows back and forth across the gym with push-ups and clapping push-ups, and time had run out. Everybody was done except for me.
Right.
And I'm going back and forth, and I'm on my last set, and I got 5 more of these push-ups to do, and I'm hitting my nose on every one.
Sure.
I can't do them, and he would not let go of my ankles. He goes, no, I'm here to help you. And he goes, you're not done. There's girls are coming onto the floor for the Foxy boxing class or whatever's
Sure.
up next. He goes, you're not done until I say you're done. And
There's
I was
Nick.
like, so I was like, yeah, he's legendary.
Yeah.
Later on, I ended up helping him with some UFC sponsorships and things like that.
Nice,
So
nice.
haven't seen him in ages, but yeah, super good guy. And then of course, good guy Trevor Smandich. I got to throw him as in
The
there
man.
too. So yeah.
Yeah.
Good friends with him. Haven't seen him in a while, but just perfect example of lead by example. Go out, do your job, and top notch guy.
Nothing bad to say about Trevor.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. Last question. Since you are a businessman, what's one thing I can improve here on my podcast?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I mean, I think it's visibility. I think because it's entertaining. Like I think you have a great radio voice. I think
Thanks, I
think
appreciate
you
that.
have lots of personality too. Like you add, like I've been on a few podcasts lately too, and you ask good questions. I think if just visibility. So again, I'm not a social media guy, and I don't know how you do that. I mean, I think it's just sort of getting more eyeballs on
Sure,
it.
I don't know either.
And there's no, there are some magic ways to it, and let me think about it because I do have some I have some connections that maybe I can help you get some more people watching it. Like. I don't know, like some of the conversations, I don't know that you have to even know too much about Muay Thai. You certainly get into some where you get into the nitty gritty and like, oh, that's over some people's heads.
Sure.
But like this sport and this community has some real great characters.
Sure does.
It's, like I think I said it off the air probably. Like, and I helped sort of promote some of the fights and get people to come into the fights and talk about the difference between going. You know, people still want to see a fight at a hockey game, so you can pay $300 or $400 for a Flames ticket and hope there might be a fight. And literally these days, it's hope.
That's it.
Or you can come and watch some young kids that are not even young, like 18, 19, 20. And these kids have put in the time, and like some of these fights that we see, these amateur level fights, they're not amateur level.
That's
like,
right.
They're just not pros because can't get paid.
That's right.
So it's entertainment. It's entertainment. You know, I do watch a little UFC. I don't love the UFC,
me
but
too.
what's the best part of the UFC part? When they stand up and knock each other
That's
out,
right.
So
the striking.
let's be honest.
That's it.
Right. So yeah, I think it's just a little more visibility. So I like helping good guys, so I'm going to do what I can to think about some ideas and how I'm going to put this stuff up on my LinkedIn and things like that.
I appreciate that, man.
I saw you dug out some retroactive picture of me.
I did.
Good thing you didn't find one of my 249 pictures extra squishy. But so I'll get some of this around my network because I have a pretty significant network here in Calgary as well. So,
awesome.
And anything I can do to help, I'll try.
Well, I appreciate it, man.
I love the setup. I love the gym. I love the atmosphere. And of
Thanks,
course,
man.
you're top notch. So.
I appreciate that. Thanks. And I appreciate you coming and doing this, man. You answered a lot. I don't even know if anybody knows what we're talking about, but you answered a lot of my questions that I've had for decades.
Yeah.
I just don't know how this works. So I really appreciate you, from my point of view, kind of being a little vulnerable with it, being open and I appreciate that, man.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity because I feel like a lot of people didn't know what was behind the curtain, right? And like, why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you accepting my help? Or why are, it needs people who do things. That's the key. Like, so a lot of people offer to help and then they fade into
talk is cheap.
Talk is cheap, man. So yeah, I did 18 years as I stopped fighting 15 years ago. Right. So I stayed in this for a long time. Now the last few years I've kind of been not as involved, just because I only have so much energy to give. Sure. Right. So I hope that maybe this will inspire some people to get interested and involved.
No kidding.
There's more push going on nowadays for regulation and such, which is going to need some people to do it. And whether it gets to the Olympics or not, I'm not super concerned about that. But I'd love to see kids who get into the sport, kids or adults, whoever it is, have opportunities to compete if you want to compete. Opportunities to see the sport, like it is entertaining, man.
It's never been bigger than right now.
Never been bigger, and it should be. Like I'm glad to see that happening. It should be happening because it's worth the price of admission every single time.
Damn right.
Every
Good call.
Yeah.
Awesome, sir. Anything else before we're out of here?
No, this is it. Again, thanks for the opportunity. This was great,
man.
and continued success with your podcast. I think you're doing good things here. Hey, getting to 100+ podcasts is no joke. It is legit. So whether you believe that or not, it is true. Like people talk about. Anybody can buy the stuff and start, but to get to that many is amazing.
Sure.
So,
4,000 more to come.
So shout out to you, buddy. Yeah,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great job.
All right, guys. Well, listen, I'll get the audio out today. A video will be out in a few days. And in the meantime, let's go watch some Muay Thai. See you later.
Awesome.